Black and White by Liu Jiming. Translated by Chen Gang. Part 1, Volume 3, Chapter 3, 1, Father passed away. The day after receiving the telegram informing him that his father, Wang Shengli, was critically ill, Wang Sheng asked for leave from school, put aside his unfinished graduation thesis, and hurriedly embarked on the journey back to Pai Town. Wang Shengli was diagnosed with liver cancer, which was already in its late stage when he was diagnosed. After staying in the town hospital for some time, he insisted on returning to the small house by the river. Initially, the town's elderly cadre office arranged for a young man to care for him. However, as time went on, the young man eventually lost patience. When Wang Shengli's military temper flared up, he drove the young man away. Later, Zhou Musheng, his former subordinate when he was the director of the brick and tile factory, took care of him for a while. Zhou Musheng, a robust and red-faced man, once served as the supply and marketing department head of the brick and tile factory in Pai Town. However, after reporting to the factory director Wang Shengli about the issue of kickbacks taken by the deputy director Ba Guangming, he was falsely accused by Ba Guangming of embezzling 500 bricks. He was subsequently dismissed from his position as department head. He worked as a worker for some time before Wang Shengli rehabilitated him and appointed him as the security department head. After Wang Shengli retired from his position as factory director, Ba Guangming took over as director, and Zhou Musheng was once again dismissed from his position as department head. Since then, he simply resigned from the brick and tile factory and, along with a group of laid-off workers, repeatedly petitioned the town government and municipal government to report on Ba Guangming. Many people saw him as one of the loyal followers of the former factory director Wang Shengli. In contrast, Ba Guangming regarded Zhou Musheng as a thorn in his side and repeatedly instigated others to harass him. To avoid retaliation, Zhou Musheng once ran to his daughter's house in the suburbs of Chuzhou and hid there for 2 years. It was not until Ba Guangming was removed from his position as factory director that he returned to Pai Town. After Wang Shengli fell ill, Zhou Musheng moved in to take care of him. He said, "The former factory director was kind to me, and I am repaying his kindness." On the riverbank, the house that Wang Shengli built by hand had long become dilapidated due to exposure to the wind and rain. The gables on both sides were leaning severely and were propped up by a few tree trunks. Many tiles on the roof had been blown off by the wind, revealing rotten rafters. The cedar forest behind the house had grown taller than a few years ago, providing shade in summer and shelter from the cold in winter, forming a natural protective screen. At that time, Wang Shengli was already very weak and unable to walk. Knowing that his days were numbered, the day after returning to the small house by the river from the town hospital, he asked Zhou Musheng to push him in a chicken cart to the brick and tile factory to take a look. During the heyday of the brick and tile factory, there were once thousands of chicken carts shuttling back and forth between the soil extraction site on the riverbank and the unshaped brick workshop, creating a vast and spectacular scene. After Ba Guangming took over as the factory director, he replaced the one-wheel chicken carts with wooden plate carts. Wang Shengli picked up this chicken cart from the garbage dump on the riverbank, and it was relied upon for building houses, extracting soil, and reclaiming land. Zhou Musheng pushed Wang Shengli with this old chicken cart to the brick and tile factory. What they saw was more like the ruins of a brick and tile factory than a factory itself. A few years ago, the brick and tile factory had already been on the verge of bankruptcy. The factory had not paid wages for 2 consecutive years, and the workers complained loudly. Customers who came to collect debts were blocking the factory gate, and even the factory director, Ba Guangming, did not dare to show his face. He had hidden somewhere unknown. Previously, the old factory director Wang Shengli and Zhou Musheng had reported Ba Guangming to the city and province, but there had been no response. The workers, who could no longer bear it, surrounded the town government compound under the leadership of Wang Shengli and Zhou Musheng. It took them 3 whole days to receive a response from above. Ba Guangming was dismissed as the factory director of the brick and tile factory, and the higher authorities filed an investigation. The arrears of workers' wages were also paid. For Wang Shengli, this was the victory he had long been waiting for. However, he could not be happy. After Ba Guangming was investigated and the case was closed without any consequences, he remained unscathed. It was said that he had bought houses in both Chuzhou City and the provincial capital and spent countless money to send his precious son Ba Dong to college. Although his family became rich first, the brick and tile factory collapsed utterly. Due to severe losses, the brick and tile factory has officially declared bankruptcy. As the old factory director, Wang Shengli could not understand how the once thriving brick and tile factory could be ruined in just a few years after Ba Guangming took over. Thinking of how the imported brick-making equipment he had personally purchased at a vast cost had turned into a pile of scrap metal, he felt heartbroken and really wanted to find a place to cry. It was from then on that his health began to deteriorate. Zhou Musheng pushed Wang Shengli to stay on the ruins of the brick and tile factory for a long time. Fatsing the empty factory buildings, the construction site littered with rubble, and the lone chimney in the center of the factory area, Wang Shengli recalled the bustling and lively scene of the brick and tile factory at the beginning of his entrepreneurial journey, as well as the grand aspirations he had set when he took office. He couldn't help but feel sad and burst into tears. Zhou Musheng was somewhat at a loss. From that day on, Wang Shengli's health began to deteriorate rapidly, and soon he was bedridden. After several twists and turns, it was already the morning of the next day when Wang Sheng returned to Pai Town. When he saw his father lying in bed, skinny as a bone, a sense of sadness he had never experienced before overwhelmed him. He choked up and called out, "Dad!" Wang Sheng called out several times in succession, but there was no response. At this moment, Wang Shengli's consciousness had become blurred, and he was in a state of unconsciousness. "When I went home for the New Year, my dad was fine. How could he get so sick in less than half a year?" Wang Sheng asked Zhou Musheng. "Uncle Zhou, why didn't you tell me earlier?"
"Alas, the old factory director was afraid of delaying your studies, so he never allowed me to tell you," Zhou Musheng said with some resignation. "These 2 days, I saw that he was not doing well, so I sent you a telegram about his critical condition without telling him."
Wang Sheng looked at the haggard and somewhat unfamiliar face, tightly gripping his father's hand, unable to hold back his grief.
"Old factory director, your son is back!" Zhou Musheng kept shouting. "Waka up, old factory director!"
Perhaps it was the warmth from Wang Sheng's hand that reached him, or maybe it was the awakening from Zhou Musheng's cries. But Wang Shengli gradually opened his eyes. When he recognized his son standing before him, a faint smile appeared on his haggard and sallow face.
"Wang Cheng, you're back?"
Wang Sheng felt his father's fingers squirm and raised them tremulously, uttering a few slurred syllables. "Bo, X." Wang Sheng didn't hear clearly, so Zhou Musheng beside him reminded him, "Your father said box." Seeing that Wang Sheng seemed to understand but not fully grasp it, he explained further. "After your father came back from the hospital in town, he found a small box from somewhere and hugged it like a treasure to his chest. Yesterday, I put it away for him." Saying this, he fumbled under the bed for a while and pulled out a square wooden box. Wang Sheng took it over and opened it. In Suzhou were his father's military medals from years ago, including a liberation medal awarded by the Central Military Commission after he was injured in the battle to liberate the provincial capital, Dazhang City. In addition, the box contained a pistol made from bullet casings, several damaged old newspapers, and old letters. These things looked so familiar, instantly evoking Wang Sheng's long-lost memories. The scenes of his father telling him stories as a child were vivid in his mind as if it were just yesterday. "Xin letter. Xin." Wang Shengli uttered 2 incoherent syllables. Wang Sheng understood and picked up an old envelope from the box and handed it to his father. "Luo Zheng," Wang Shengli muttered, staring intently at Wang Sheng with an expression that seemed to convey some entrustment. Luo Zheng. Wang Sheng had been familiar with this name since he was young. It belonged to his father's comrade in arms, who once raised the 5-starred red flag on the customs building in Dajiang City with him. In the old copy of the Dajiang Daily, there was an article written by Luo Zheng inside the box. Back then, I was with your uncle Luo Zheng. Every time his father recounted that past event, he would start with these words, his face brimming with pride. Wang Sheng seemed to understand his father's intention. Dad, do you want me to take this letter and look for Uncle Luo Zheng? Hearing his son's words, Wang Shengli's clouded eyes lit up, and the hand he had raised drooped limply. A relieved smile appeared on his face. The next day, Wang Shengli passed away. The day before the burial, many people, all former workers from the brick and tile factory, gathered on the riverbank. Regardless of their age, they followed the customs of the Pigu mountain area, kowtowing and burning joss paper in front of Wang Shengli's portrait. Some cried as if they had lost a loved one, pouring out their hearts while weeping. Old factory director, you were so worried when you were the factory director. Now, the brick and tile factory has been destroyed and the bad guys are still at large. How unfair the heavens are. Old factory director, you have worked tirelessly for the welfare of our workers throughout your life, fighting against corrupt officials without regard for personal fame and gain. Now that you've passed away, I'll bow down to you 3 times. Old factory director, you once aspired to let the common people live in brick and tile houses. But now the factory is gone and you're gone too. What will you do in the future? Veteran hero, may you rest in peace. We will never forget you. The sound of sobbing and sighing filled the air. Wang Shengli was buried the following day. Wang Sheng buried his father next to his mother, which was his father's last wish. When he was young, every New Year's Eve and Qingming festival, his father would lead him to sweep the tomb for his mother, burning incense and murmuring, "When I die, bury me next to your mother. I didn't spend enough time with her when I was alive, so we can't be separated after death." The weather was a bit gloomy, as if it would rain. The river flowed eastward, day and night. The riverbank was more desolate than before, covered with thorns and reeds. Over the years, his father had been planting trees and reclaiming land on the riverbank, but he had never managed to create a decent piece of land. Every year, before crops could grow, the floods that came with the arrival of summer would inundate it. Wang Sheng had more than once ridiculed his father's futility, but now, looking at this desolate and empty wilderness, Wang Sheng suddenly thought of Sisyphus, the Greek mythological figure who kept pushing a rock up a mountain, and the text, "The foolish old man moves the mountains," from his childhood Chinese textbook. Perhaps the significance of a father lies in this seemingly futile effort, including his relentless reporting of Ba Guangming over the years. Maybe it's all about knowing what's impossible but still doing it, Wang Sheng thought. He gazed at his parents' graves, his vision blurring. A profound sadness and an unprecedented sense of loneliness, which he had never experienced before losing his parents, permeated his entire body like water. He recalled the intimate relationship he had with his father when he was a child. He admired his father, who was also proud of him and saw him as his future. However, as he grew older, he gradually drifted away from his father mentally, becoming increasingly estranged and almost like strangers to each other. He always felt that his father had never understood him, just as he could not understand his father. It was as if they lived in 2 separate worlds, leading to frequent conflicts between father and son. Because of these conflicts, he rarely went home in recent years. He always thought that this was the commonly mentioned adolescent rebellion and growing pains, and felt justified. Still, at this moment, when his father passed away forever, it meant that he had become an orphan completely, and he had no family in this world anymore. His mother passed away when he was young, but now, as an adult, Wang Sheng felt the cruelty of death. He wanted to refuse to acknowledge this cruel reality, but he couldn't. He would rather believe that his father had not completely left, and that his father's life had remained in this world through another way, such as that medal, that old envelope, and Uncle Luo Zheng, whom he had never met. 2. Search for Luo Zheng. After handling his father's funeral, Wang Sheng returned to school and went to look for Luo Zheng. Wang Sheng only learned from the old envelope left by his father that Luo Zheng was working at the Dongjiang Daily, but he knew nothing about which department he was in or what position he held. Before setting off, Wang Sheng called the Dongjiang Daily. The main switchboard answered the call, and the operator was a woman who spoke standard Mandarin. She sounded young and had a good attitude. She asked Wang Sheng, "Which department are you looking for?" Wang Sheng said, "I'm looking for someone named Luo Zheng. I don't know which department he's in." But before he could finish speaking, the other party interrupted him. "There are over 1,000 people in the newspaper office. I do not know who Luo Zheng is, but how can I transfer you if you don't know which department he's in?" Wang Sheng said, "Then please transfer to the editorial office." He assumed that since the editorial office had many acquaintances, they should know which department Luo Zheng was in. The editor-in-chief's office was quickly connected. This time, a man answered the phone. When he heard Wang Sheng say he was looking for Luo Zheng, he immediately said, "I'm sorry, you have the wrong number. There's no such person here." As he spoke, he was about to hang up. Wang Sheng hurriedly said, "This person is an old comrade in arms of my father. Could you please help me ask which department he is in?" The other party was initially a bit impatient, but upon hearing Wang Sheng's sincere tone, he hesitated for a moment and said, "Please wait a moment," before hanging up. After a while, the other party picked up the phone again. "I asked my colleagues and they confirmed that there was such a person. He's an old comrade who used to work in the Rural Affairs Department. Before the Cultural Revolution, he served as the chief editor of the Rural Edition. Later, he was imprisoned and was released a few years ago." The other party spoke hesitantly. "However, I'm not sure which department he joined after his release. You'd better go and ask the political department." Wang Sheng redialed the main switchboard and asked the female operator to transfer the call to the political department. The person who answered the phone was also a woman who sounded older than the operator. Upon hearing that Wang Sheng was looking for Luo Zheng, she immediately asked with caution, "Where are you from, and who is he?" Wang Sheng had no choice but to repeat what he had just said. The other person's tone softened, but she was still somewhat indifferent. "Luo Zheng has long retired," the other person said, adding, "Oh no, to be exact, he is retired. He started working before 1949. "How can I find him?" Wang Sheng asked. "You can ask the Retired Personnel Office. They are in charge of retired personnel." After saying that, the other party slammed down the phone. Wang Sheng had no choice but to dial the main switchboard of the Dongjiang Daily and get through to the office of the retired cadres. The person who answered the phone was an old comrade with a local accent of Dajiang, whose voice was a bit hoarse. Upon hearing that Wang Sheng was looking for Luo Zheng, the person asked Wang Sheng where he was from, what relationship he had with Luo Zheng, and so on, just like a police officer checking someone's household registration. After clarifying Wang Sheng's identity, the person told him that Luo Zheng had gone through the retirement procedures several years ago and currently lived in the dormitory of the printing plant of the Dongjiang Daily. Wang Sheng wanted to ask about the specific building, but the person had already hung up the phone. The Dongjiang Daily newspaper office was previously located on Yanji Road. Later, the provincial government granted the newspaper a special plot of land on the edge of South Lake. After constructing new office buildings and staff dormitories, the newspaper moved to the South Lake area, giving up its old office buildings and dormitories on Yanji Road to a printing plant. Most of the newspaper's staff moved into the new dormitories by South Lake, but some older staff still reside on Yanji Road. Yanji Road was close to the river. The street was narrow, and the buildings on both sides were gray and dilapidated, like the setting of an old movie, exuding an aura of decay. The sycamore trees were tall and thick, especially in the summer. The dense foliage blocked the sun and provided shade, making it cool. Nearby was a Christian church, and the Dajiang Provincial Puking Opera Theater was across from the church. When Wang Sheng had just enrolled as a graduate student at Dongjiang University, he had followed his mentor, Professor Lang Yongliang, to participate in a viewing activity organized by the Provincial Department of Culture. He had seen a new Peking opera called The Tale of an Official's Promotion at the Peking Opera Theater. Afterward, he wrote a short review that was published in the Dajiang Daily. The Dongjiang Daily printing factory was in a small alley beside the Peking Opera Theater. After Wang Sheng got off the bus, he walked less than 100 meters along that small alley and saw the sign for the Dajiang Daily printing factory. A large truck with a tarpaulin was parked at the entrance, and several workers were unloading goods from the truck. An old man wearing a flat cap stood at the door of the guardhouse, watching the workers like a guard. When he saw Wang Sheng heading towards the entrance, he turned his head and called out to him, "Who are you looking for?" "I'm looking for Luo Zheng." "Looking for Luo Zheng?" The old man in the cap sized him up warily. "Who are you? What do you want from him?" Wang Sheng had heard such questions several times over the phone, so he repeated the few sentences he had answered on the phone as if reciting them from memory. The old man in the cap still seemed uneasy, so he asked Wang Sheng to take out his student ID and scrutinize it. Then he reluctantly told him, "Lao Luo lives in the building behind the printing factory. However, he's rarely at home during the day." Wang Sheng could tell that the old man in the cap had become much more amiable than before, so he asked, "Do you know where he went?" "Stand aside a bit. Be careful not to get hit," the old man in the cap said, as he saw another large truck pull up outside the gate. He gestured for Wang Sheng to move aside, just like a traffic policeman, and muttered, "Where else can he go but the bookstore?" "Bookstore? Lao Luo has opened a used bookstore. He spends most of his time there daily, sometimes returning late at night." The old man in a cap sized up Wang Sheng again and said, "Young man, you'd better not wait here. Go to the bookstore to find him." Wang Sheng nodded and said, "All right, do you know where the bookstore is?" The old man in the cap thought momentarily and said, "You go back along the road you came, turn right after passing the church, cross a footbridge, and then walk about 100 meters and you'll be there." "What's the name of the bookstore?" Wang Sheng asked again, feeling uneasy. The old man in a cap said, "What's the name? I can't tell you either. There's only one second-hand bookstore on that street, so you don't have to worry about getting it wrong." Wang Sheng thanked him and left from the printing factory's entrance. But the old man in the cap stopped him just a few steps away. "Young man, you have to be careful when you're with Lao Luo." Wang Sheng paused and asked in confusion, "Why?" The old man in the cap pointed his right finger at his forehead and said, "Old Luo has a problem here. He often talks nonsense, and his words can't be taken seriously." Wang Sheng wanted to ask more, but the old man in the cap had already turned around and walked back to the reception room. Following the route indicated by the old man in the cap, Wang Sheng took less than a quarter of an hour to find the overpass. Next to the overpass stood the south gate of Dongjiang Normal College. Along the road, along both sides of the college, were a series of low, old-fashioned wooden houses, including grocery stores, clothing stores, hardware stores, small restaurants, and inns. Customers and pedestrians flowed continuously, filling the area with the intense marketplace atmosphere. Right in the middle of this row of wooden houses, a plaque with 4 vigorous and quaint traditional characters, People's Bookstore, caught Wang Sheng's eye. 3. People's Bookstore. The doorframe of the bookstore was very low, and when Wang Sheng walked in, he almost bumped his head. It was an old-fashioned wooden doorframe with a blackish-yellow color, as if it had been smoked, burned by fire and baked by the years, emitting an old and musty smell. The bookstore was a little dark. After a while, Wang Sheng adapted to the light inside. On the bookshelves arranged against the 3 walls were all kinds of books. The color of the books was similar to that of the entire store, old and yellowing. Some of them were damaged and incomplete. There were only 3 customers in the old bookstore. An old man wearing a gray cloth Zhongshan suit with arm sleeves on his arms and a pair of reading glasses on his nose, a middle-aged man in blue overalls looking like a worker, and a teenager who looked like a middle school student. They were all engrossed in reading and overlooked Wang Sheng. He walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out a high school Chinese textbook published in 1980. The cover had already fallen off and was taped with adhesive tape. There were a few crooked words on the flyleaf: Hongsing Middle School, 1st grade, Yangchang Jun, September 1980. Wang Sheng stared at the number 1980. How coincidental. That was also the year he was in the 1st grade. The texts in the table of contents looked very familiar. Manjiang Hong, to Comrade Guo Moruo, Ode to the White Poplar, Transforming Our Studies, October in China, Exhortation to Study, The Family of Chen Shi, Thunderstorm, Excerpt, Running for Governor. Seeing these titles, a feeling of warmth rose in Wang Sheng's heart. He casually flipped to the text in a wave of a hand, and a passage came into view. The crowd surged forward once again like a gust of wind over water, rushing towards the plane. The chairman stood at the cabin door, taking off his hat and looking at the people seeing him off as if he were comforting them, encouraging them. The people did not know how to express their feelings. They just frantically waved their hands together, as if a gust of wind suddenly blew up in the airport, with hundreds of arms waving, reaching out to the chairman from below and from far away. How familiar was that passage? Wang Sheng couldn't help but read it out loud. At this moment, someone lightly hushed him, reminding him, "Be quiet, don't disturb others from reading." Wang Sheng turned his head and saw that it was the old man who had worn arm sleeves.
"Young man, what book do you want? Let me help you find it,"
the old man said as he walked over with a smile.
"I'm not buying a book. I'm here looking for someone."
Wang Sheng shook his head and put the old textbook back on the shelf.
"Are you looking for someone?"
The old man said, "Oh," and asked, "Who are you looking for?" Wang Sheng hesitated and sized up the old man. He was about 60 years old, tall with a bit of a hunch in his back. His face was square, what people usually called a Chinese character face. His forehead was covered with deep wrinkles, and his gaze was firm, revealing a kind of edge that could not be worn away by the years. Wang Sheng felt that he had seen that pair of eyes somewhere before.
"I'm looking for Uncle Luo Zheng," he said.
When the old man heard it, his eyes suddenly lit up.
"You are—"
Wang Sheng said, "My father's name is Wang Shengli." "Wang Shengli," the old man muttered these words, his lips trembling slightly as he held Wang Sheng's hand. "You are Wang Shengli, the son of Commander Wang?" "Are you Uncle Luo?" The two men's hands gripped each other tightly. Their voices were so loud that it startled the middle-aged man who looked like a worker and the teenager in the bookstore. They both looked up at them at the same time. Luo Zheng smiled apologetically at them and said, "I'm sorry. An old comrade's son has come to see me, and the bookstore is closing early today." After the two readers left the bookstore, Luo Zheng closed the door and removed the arm sleeves from his arms.
"Come with me,"
he said. As if he was treating a child, he held Wang Sheng's hand and led him up the stairs behind the bookstore to the attic. The attic was not big. Besides a window facing the street, a skylight was on the roof. The sunlight came directly from the skylight, making the attic much brighter than the first floor. In the middle of the attic was a long rectangular table, several square stools, and a set of simple sofas. It looked like a meeting room or a living room. What caught the eye was that the four walls of the attic were covered with New Year paintings and propaganda posters, such as Learning from Dajai in agriculture, Learning from Daqing in industry, The Red Lantern, Taking Tiger Mountain by strategy, and Shajiabang, and images of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, and Mao Zedong. They were all images that Wang Sheng had seen when he was a child, especially the image of Chairman Mao, which was the same as the one that hung in his home when he was a child. In an instant, he felt a sense of time flowing backward. Luo Zheng saw Wang Sheng admiring those paintings and said, "Like the old books downstairs, these were all bought from recycling stations." "I used to have these paintings at home," Wang Sheng said, Every year during the spring festival, my dad would take me to the store in town to buy New Year paintings.
Sit down. It's quiet here, so we can have a good chat, Luo Zheng said as he pulled him to the sofa. Tell me, is your dad still doing okay? Wang Sheng lowered his head and said, My dad has passed away. After hearing this, Luo Zheng didn't say anything for a long while. After a good while, he sighed. I received a letter from your dad a few years ago. I wrote back to him, but I don't know if he received it or not. Wang Sheng took out an old envelope from his bag and said, Is this the letter? Luo Zheng opened the envelope, removed the letter inside, and looked at it. Yes, it's this letter. Back then, I had just been released from prison and returned to the newspaper office. Your dad sent me a complaint letter. Uncle Luo, and this old newspaper, this medal. Wang Sheng took out the crumpled old newspaper and the Liberation medal. My dad has been keeping them. Luo Zheng held the old newspaper in his hands and said excitedly, Seeing this newspaper reminded me of the scene when your dad and I planted the 5-starred red flag on the customs building when we liberated Dajong. Your dad was a famous combat hero in the entire army. He fought like a fierce tiger, so they nicknamed him Tiger. In a flash, it's been almost 40 years. And this Liberation medal, I have one too, exactly like this one. His hands trembled as he touched the medal. His eyes became somewhat teary. Child, what's your name again? Wang Sheng, Cheng? It's like that volunteer soldier hero in the movie Heroic Sons and Daughters. I remember your dad dreaming of rushing to the front lines during the war to resist the U.S. and aid Koruha. That's why he gave you this name. It has a profound meaning. After a good while, Luo Zheng finally calmed down. Child, your dad and I were comrades who fought together, and he is no more. When I see you, it's like seeing him, he said in a low voice. Tell me, child, where did you come from? How did you find me? In these years, those people at the newspaper have been unwilling for me to interact with others. Whenever someone came looking for me, they would always find various excuses to distract me. Wang Sheng felt a hint of helplessness and bitterness from his series of questions and said, I'm a graduate student at Dongjiang University. You're studying at Dongjiang University. Why didn't you come to see me earlier? Luo Zheng said with a hint of reproach. I wanted to come to see you earlier, but Wang Sheng hesitated, momentarily unable to come up with a suitable excuse. I called the newspaper several times and finally found your whereabouts. It's already quite impressive that you found me, Luo Zheng chuckled. In recent years, quite a few people have gone to the newspaper to look for me, but they were all directly turned away. Wang Sheng asked in confusion, Why? But Luo Zheng didn't answer. You just said that you have just been released from prison. As soon as Wang Sheng spoke, he felt that he had been too abrupt and couldn't help but regret it. As expected, a subtle shadow appeared on Luo Zheng's face. He glanced at his watch, looked around, and said, Oh, it's almost 6 o'clock. Let's have dinner here. Wang Sheng quickly stood up and said, I won't trouble you any further. It's not a hassle. There's a kitchen downstairs. Usually, if I don't want to return to the printing factory dormitory, I just make a bowl of noodles in the bookstore. Wang Sheng still felt embarrassed. Are you alone in the bookstore? I hired a shop assistant, but he's on leave these 2 days due to some matters. Luo Zheng stood up and walked downstairs. Due to his tall stature, the ceiling was too low, and his head almost touched the roof. He had to hunch his back and walk down the stairs step by step. Wang Sheng was the only one left in the attic. He looked around the room again and noticed a desk by the window, neatly stacked with a row of books. Upon closer inspection, he saw a set of selected works of Marx and Engels with white covers, a total of 20 volumes, published by the People's Publishing House in 1973. Due to the long publication time, the books were slightly yellowed, and the spines had been nibbled by mice, revealing the binding threads inside. Alongside this set of old books were another set of 8 volumes of selected works of Lenin and volumes 1 to 5 of selected works of Mao Zedong. Wang Sheng retracted his gaze and noticed a copy of the Celebrity Biography magazine, published in 1978,
on the table. An article titled "The Relationship Between Me, Zhang Da, and Song Qiankun" caught his interest. The article was signed Anna Louise. In September 1931, I married Zhang Da in Moscow. At that time, Zhang Da served as the liaison for the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China to the Communist International while I was studying at Sun Yat-sen University. In 1932, as Zhang Da's secretary, I followed him back to Shanghai, China. I assisted Zhang Da in handling the liaison between the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the Communist International. After the enemy destroyed the central authorities, Zhang Da and I secretly transferred, bypassing Hong Kong and Japan, and once again arrived in Moscow. In 1936, after the Central Committee and the Red Army reached northern Shanxi, we followed the instructions of the Communist International and the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and arrived in Yan'an. Soon after, Zhang Da was appointed as the main person in charge of the Dongjiang Bureau of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. I accompanied him to leave Yan'an and arrived in Dajiang City, the capital of Dongjiang Province. In 1938, I served as the confidential secretary to Zhang Da. Song Qiankun was the security staff officer of the Dongjiang Bureau of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and was directly responsible for Zhang Da's security. Zhang Da liked to go out for a walk every afternoon after he was tired from work. Sometimes I accompanied him, and sometimes he went alone. On the afternoon of the day when the incident occurred, I went to the 8th office to deliver an intelligence report and didn't return in time. Zhang Da went out for a walk alone. Every time he walked, he took the path from Maple Garden to Mount Pipa. In the Dongjiang Bureau, only I, Song Qiankun, and Zhang Da's security guards knew this secret. According to the regulations, security personnel must closely guard the leader whenever he goes out for private or official business. However, the two security guards didn't follow Zhang Da that afternoon. The security department temporarily arranged for them to pick up a leader from Yan'an at the airport. The order given to them was precisely from Song Qiankun. Later, during the investigation, Song Qiankun explained that the leaders had been frequently away during those 2 days, and the security personnel were overwhelmed, so they temporarily reassigned 2 security guards from Zhang Da. Zhang Da went out for a walk, and he always took the same route every day and nothing ever happened. I was careless. These were the exact words Song Qiankun used during the investigation. Later, the organization only seriously warned him about dereliction of duty and did not pursue any other responsibilities. However, Song Qiankun's explanation of his behavior as carelessness is untenable. If it was just carelessness, why did Zhang Da happen to be secretly kidnapped by Kuomintang agents that afternoon? Why did the agents know Zhang Da's walking time and route so well? And they chose to do it when only he was alone. Is this just a coincidence? According to 2 of Zhang Da's security guards, during a trip to the Tianhan Theater with Zhang Da, Song Qiankun had a private meeting with Bai Shouhu, the director of the Kuomintang Military Intelligence Bureau. It was Bai Shouhu who was responsible for carrying out the kidnapping operation against Zhang Da. Some suspected that Song Qiankun had revealed Zhang Da's walking time and route to the Military Intelligence Bureau and temporarily removed the guards, allowing the agents to abduct Zhang Da successfully. Song Qiankun has always denied this suspicion. Due to the lack of evidence, coupled with Zhang Da's soon-to-be-published confession in a Kuomintang newspaper, publicly admitting that he had lost faith in communism and voluntarily joined the Kuomintang camp, the suspicion against Song Qiankun was left unresolved. In 1940, Song Qiankun and I officially got married in Yan'an. Before that, I had already announced in the newspaper that I had terminated my marital relationship with Zhang Da. As Zhang Da's ex-wife and subordinate, Song Qiankun and I resumed working after undergoing rigorous organizational investigations. We both believed that the other was a loyal Communist Party member. We also gained mutual trust in our emotional and family lives. From Song Qiankun's nonchalant attitude towards me carrying Zhang Da's child, I believed he loved me. Of course, he also won my love. and our relationship lasted until after liberation. During the Liberation War, Song Qiankun served as the Minister of Urban Work for the Dongjiang Provincial Committee and engaged in underground work in Dazhang City. After liberation, he served as the Deputy Minister of the Provincial Party Committee's Propaganda Department, overseeing literary and artistic work. Song Qiankun felt that his position was too low for his abilities and qualifications, and he felt frustrated and often complained at home, saying that the Dongjiang Provincial Committee was suppressing the White Aruha faction by the Red Aruha faction. The so-called Red Aruha faction refers to cadres from the liberated areas. In contrast, the White Aruha faction refers to cadres engaged in underground work in the areas controlled by the nationalist government. He even attributed his lack of promotion to me, the wife of traitor Zhang Da, and his attitude towards me and my son Song Jie changed significantly. On one occasion, he even hit Song Jie. Although Song Qiankun apologized to me later, a shadow was cast over my heart. Song is a talented and capable person. He joined the revolution early and possesses a good education. He enjoys photography and writing in his spare time, often publishing literary works in newspapers and magazines. After publishing Song's novel, The Majestic Song of the Great River, he purchased several hundred copies from the publishing house and asked me to send them out according to a list. Leaders of the Central Committee and the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee almost each had a copy of The Majestic Song of the Great River. Song suddenly became a star-like figure. It is said that the central leaders noticed him and affectionately called him a talented scholar. Soon, through the connections of his cousin Han Ying, who worked in the central government, and her husband, General Hong Hu, Song Qiankun was transferred to Deputy Director of the Youth Cadre Bureau of the Central Organization Department. As an English editor, I was also moved to the People's China magazine. The Youth Cadre Bureau is a department of the Central Organization Department, specifically responsible for selecting young cadres. Suddenly becoming the head of an important central department from an unknown local cadre, Song Qiankun's status and mental outlook changed drastically. His previously negative and gloomy mood was swept away, and our marital relationship, and including his attitude towards Song Jie, improved significantly. During that period, Song Qiankun was particularly ambitious. Once, when he had had too much to drink at home, he told me with pride that he was about to be promoted to bureau chief. My goal is to join the Central Committee before I'm 40 and 50. That year, Song Qiankun was just 35 years old. I saw a man's vigorous ambition or wild ambition in his eyes. I had seen such ambition and wild ambition before in Zongda. In 1953, a nationwide anti-counter-revolutionary campaign began, and a large number of concealed enemy agents and counter-revolutionaries were suppressed. To my surprise, shortly after the start of the anti-counter-revolutionary campaign, Song Qiankun was suddenly suspended from his post for investigation. I didn't know why he was being investigated, and when I inquired with the relevant departments, I only heard that it was related to the anti-counter-revolutionary campaign. 3 months later, Song Qiankun suddenly returned. After not seeing him for several months, he had lost a whole circle of weight and his beard had grown half a foot long. I almost didn't recognize him. "Song, why were you investigated? Is it still because of Zhangda?" I asked eagerly. "No." Song Qiankun shook his head and said with a gloomy face, "Someone reported to the central government that I betrayed and defected to the enemy when I was serving as the head of the urban work department of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and sold important secrets of the party." Before liberation, Song Qiankun was arrested by Kuomintang agents while engaging in underground work in Dazhang City. Later, it was through the organization's connections with the upper echelons of the Kuomintang that he was rescued from prison. But I have never heard of betrayal. Is it true or is it a false accusation? Betrayal? Who reported it? My former subordinate from my underground work days served as my liaison, Song Qiankun said with a bitter smile. After liberation, he kept reporting on me,
And this time, during the anti-counter-revolutionary campaign, he even reported me to the central government. The so-called reports are purely fabrications. I have already reported to the provincial party committee and the central government about my entire underground work experience in Dajiang. Fortunately, the central government is discerning and observant. Otherwise, I would have been unable to clear my name no matter how hard I tried. I was already wearing the label of Big Traitor as Zhang Da's ex-wife. If Song Qiankun really became a traitor, wouldn't I have married 2 traitors? I feel fortunate for Song Qiankun, and also for myself. Although Song Qiankun was cleared of the accusation of being a traitor, his opportunity to be promoted to the position of director was dashed. This was a significant blow to Song Qiankun. For a long time, he became dispirited and demoralized, seemingly returning to his previous days working in Dongjiang. Fortunately, he was still young, and during his time at the Central Organization Department, he accumulated many new connections. Not long after, a new opportunity arrived. Song Qiankun was transferred back to work in Dongjiang. Although it was back to his previous workplace, this time he held the position of member of the Standing Committee of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and Minister of the Propaganda Department. Although there was only a difference between the principal and deputy positions, it was a significant promotion, and his identity and status were incomparable to the past. I had originally thought that after all these twists and turns, our marriage with Song Qiankun would overcome our misunderstandings and restore our relationship. However, little did I know that what happened later would accelerate our breakup. The article abruptly ends here. There is an afterword at the back. Anna Louise, born in Yorkshire, England in 1914, graduated from the University of Leeds. During her university years, she was influenced by the ideas of German female revolutionary Rosa Luxemburg. She met and fell in love with Zhang Da, who was studying in the UK. She participated in the anti-Japanese War and the Liberation War. During the anti-Japanese War, she joined the Communist Party of China through the introduction of Zhou Enlai and Deng Yingchao. After founding New China, she was engaged in foreign cultural exchange work for a long time. She served as the confidential secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China's Dongjiang Bureau, the English editor of the People's China magazine, and the foreign language consultant of the Dongjiang Provincial Broadcasting Bureau. During the Cultural Revolution, she served as a duty officer in the Iron Flow Corps, a revolutionary rebel organization of faculty and staff at Dongjiang University. Soon after, she was imprisoned for being a foreign spy. After being rehabilitated and released from prison in 1977, she left China and returned to the UK to settle down. Anna Louise was a staunch international communist fighter who contributed most of her life to the Chinese Revolution and socialist cause. She wrote a long autobiography titled I Witnessed the Chinese Revolution, excerpted from this book. The editor adds the title. Some paragraphs in the article are marked with horizontal lines and strange symbols, and many blank spaces are filled with annotations. Obviously, Luo Zheng has read this article more than once or twice. Wang Sheng stared at those symbols and annotations, his mind filled with questions. At this moment, Luo Zheng returned to the attic with 2 bowls of steaming noodles. While eating the noodles, Wang Sheng pondered over those questions. Finally, he couldn't help asking, Uncle Luo, do you know Song Qiankun and Anna Louise? Luo Zheng had just finished his noodles. He drank the last bit of broth, put down the bowl, and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. It's not just knowing each other. Song Qiankun is my former superior. A strange smile flashed across his face, and he looked at Wang Sheng with a peculiar expression. Son, didn't you just ask me what getting out of prison means? Now let me explain it to you from the beginning. 4. Luo Zheng's narration. 1. Shortly after the victory of the anti-Japanese War, Chiang Kai-shek, while publicly advocating for the establishment of a peaceful nation and inviting Chairman Mao to Chongqing for negotiations, secretly mobilized troops to launch a large-scale invasion of our liberated areas. After the Shandong campaign, the ink-stained Double Tenth Agreement became a worthless piece of paper.
With the full outbreak of the Liberation War in the northeast and North China, Dongjiang Province, located in the Central Plains, also became a crucial battleground for the Kuomintang and the Communist Party. Chairman Mao of the Party Central Committee instructed the Dongjiang Bureau and the Dongjiang Provincial Committee to shift the focus of military work from rural areas to cities, and a group of military cadres were transferred from the troops to engage in underground work in cities such as Dajiang. At that time, I served as a propaganda officer in the cultural department of the 5th Division of the new 4th Army. Perhaps because I was a native of Dajiang, the organization sent me back to Dajiang to serve as a liaison between the provincial and Dajiang Underground Working Committee. The head of the Dajiang Working Committee is Wei Shangsheng, also known by his codename Old Catfish. He is a worker cadre who participated in the February 7th strike and possesses extensive underground work experience. During the Japanese occupation, the Dajiang underground organization he led secretly delivered a large amount of ammunition and medical supplies to the new 4th Army and guerrillas who persisted in the anti-Japanese war in Dongjiang. After the victory of the anti-Japanese war, Wei Xiangsheng, as an outstanding representative of the Secret Front, attended the Dongjiang Provincial Party Congress, Niangzhou Lake Base Area, and received recognition from the Provincial Party Committee. I had also written a special interview with him, which was published in the Frontier Journal of the Provincial Party Committee. Old Catfish was the name of a type of fish that was known for its ferocity in the Dajiang region, and using it as Wei Shangsheng's codename was very appropriate. Old Catfish was very happy about the organization sending me back to work in Dongjiang. During our first meeting, he welcomed me at a small restaurant called Fatty's by the river on Yanji Road and treated me to a stewed perch hot pot. Due to the rules of underground work, we did not drink any alcohol.
Brother Luo, last time at the base you wrote such a long article praising me, and I haven't had time to thank you yet.
Old Catfish picked up his teacup and said in a low voice, "Come on, let's toast with tea instead of wine and drink to this." I said seriously, "Lao Wei, this isn't praise but a necessity for publicity work." Old Catfish said carelessly, "Hey, little brother, I'm just a roughneck, so don't nitpick about my words. It's just that." Born as a carpenter, he wore a coarse cloth work uniform, had a full beard, and spoke loudly. Even though he lowered his voice, he still sounded like a loud bell, making my eardrums buzz. Fortunately, there were few customers in the small restaurant, so I didn't have to worry about being overheard. Stewed perch hot pot was a famous local dish in Dajiang. First, ginger, anise, chili peppers, and other seasonings were prepared in a hot pot, and after the water boiled, the freshly killed silver carp was thrown into the hot pot. The delicious flavor was unmatched in the world. The people of Dajiang never failed to use stewed perch hot pot to treat guests from afar. Although I was not a guest from afar, Old Catfish treated me, a person sent by the old home, as a relative. And what's more, there was also that connection between us through my writings. At that time, the underground work in Dajiang was challenging. The Kuomintang army was on the offensive on the front line. In the areas ruled by the Kuomintang, the military and central intelligence agents carried out frenzied destruction of our party's underground organizations. Just 6 months ago, due to betrayal by traitors, several key liaison stations of the Dajiang Working Committee were destroyed, and a large number of comrades were arrested. The connection between the Working Committee and the Dongjiang Provincial Committee was almost completely cut off. My arrival restored the connection between the Dajiang Working Committee and the Provincial Committee, marking the beginning of the recovery of Dongjiang's underground work after suffering heavy losses. As the person in charge of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee, Old Catfish was naturally excited. To learn from the painful lesson of the enemy destroying the liaison stations and ensure that there would not be any more mistakes in the contact between the Dajiang Working Committee and the Provincial Party Committee, Old Catfish made careful arrangements for my work. My work was only responsible to him alone. In other words, as a liaison, I was directly led by Old Catfish, and Old Catfish was my only superior. Other than him, I was not allowed to have contact with anyone else in the Dazhang underground organization. When we parted at the Fatty's restaurant that day, Old Catfish solemnly reminded me, "Comrade Flying Dove, this is an iron discipline. Unless there are special circumstances, you must not break this rule." Flying Dove was my code name. My public identity was the owner of the People's Bookstore. The bookstore was a wooden building with an attic at the south gate of the Dazhang Normal University, now the Dazhang Normal University. The wooden structure was my family's property. Before the outbreak of the war against Japan, my entire family lived here. My parents were from Niangzhou County. My grandparents fished in Niangzhou Lake for all their lives. In the end, not only could they not afford a decent house, but they lived like groundhogs in a shanty by Niangzhou Lake, and the whole family could not even fill their stomachs. When my father was 10, my grandparents sent him to work as an apprentice at a bamboo shop on Yanji Road in Dajiang City. My father was skillful and clever. In less than 2 years, he had learned bamboo craft. He could not only weave household items such as tables, chairs, mattresses, baskets, and dustpans, but also weave decorative works of art such as flowers, birds, insects, and fish, which were very popular with customers. The owner of the bamboo shop was named Feng, and he was a cripple. His wife had died early, and he had a daughter who was 3 years older than my father. She was unmarried. Mr. Feng took a liking to my father's honesty and intelligence and intended to marry his daughter to him. In this way, my father, who had just turned 15, went from apprenticing at the Feng bamboo shop to becoming the son-in-law of the Feng bamboo shop's owner. The following year, I was born in that wooden building on Rouge Road. When I was 2 years old, my maternal grandfather, the owner of Feng bamboo shop, passed away, and my father became the de facto heir to Feng bamboo shop's business. In 1937, I was studying at the affiliated high school of the Dajiang Normal University. Not long after the Battle of Shanghai, and facing the increasingly urgent war situation, the anti-Japanese morale in all walks of life in Dajiang was very high. The teachers and students of the normal school and the affiliated high school were united in their hatred of the enemy, and they rushed to the streets to promote resistance against foreign aggression and vowed to live and die with the troops defending the city. It was during this time that I met my Chinese teacher, Cheng Zuliang. Under his influence, I gained a preliminary understanding of the Chinese Communist Party's anti-Japanese stance and became a member of the Anti-Japanese Vanguard Youth Association, a periphery organization of the underground Communist Party. Bai Shui, who was a classmate of mine, was also a member of this organization. She was a beautiful girl with a talent for the arts. We played the leading roles together in a street drama called Put Down Your Whip in the Youth Association's propaganda team. In the autumn of 1938, after the Japanese army captured Nanjing, the capital of China, they were pressing towards Dajiang City, the provincial capital of Dongjiang Province. The nationalist troops were in retreat, and the fall of Dajiang was only a matter of time. The people all over the city were panic-stricken and were vying with each other to flee. My parents also joined the exodus. They tried to force me to go with them to avoid the war in Niangzhou County. Under the pressure of my parents' insistence, I agreed to go with them on the surface. However, halfway through, I secretly slipped back to the school. I never imagined this was the last time I would see my parents. Half a year later, Japanese planes bombed Niangzhou County, and both my parents were killed in the artillery fire of the Japanese invaders. At this time, the nationalist troops who had vowed to live and die with Dajiang retreated without a fight, and the Japanese army advanced without resistance and occupied Dajiang. I, Bai Shui, and more than 10 other members of the Anti-Japanese Vanguard Youth Association evacuated from Dajiang City with teacher Cheng Zuliang and joined the new Fourth Army. I never imagined that 6 years later, I would return to Dajiang City as a liaison of the underground Communist Party, converting the wooden building left by my grandparents and parents into a bookstore and turning it into a vital liaison station of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee. Besides me, there was also a clerk named Xiao He at the People's Bookstore. He was a radio operator sent to me by the organization. Xiao He was 2 years younger than me and had a relatively introverted personality. He had previously worked in the intelligence department of the new Fourth Army. The secret radio station was set up in the attic. It was my study and bedroom as well as Xiao He's radio room. 21 years ago, my mother had given birth to me in this small attic that was less than 10 square meters. The work at the liaison station was rigorous. Each time I received a secret message from the provincial party committee, I would publish a message in the Dazhang Daily according to the established contact method. This store has a batch of books in stock to be sold at a 40% discount. Those who are interested should come to the store to discuss. The Dajiang Daily newspaper office was located at 125 Yanji Road, near the bookstore. Opposite it was a brothel called Yihong Courtyard, probably because the reporters at the newspaper office were all wealthy and liked to frequent brothels. The business at Yihong Courtyard was particularly booming. The prostitutes never hesitated to solicit business and would often sneak into the newspaper office to entice customers. It was a gray 5-story building. The advertising department was on the first floor. Once I went to the newspaper office to place an advertisement and was almost mistaken for a reporter by the prostitutes and dragged into the Yihong Courtyard. Speaking of which, when I was studying at the affiliated high school of the normal school, I had once considered being a reporter my most fantastic ideal. After the Communist Party took over the Dajiang Daily, the Dajiang Daily was changed to the Dongjiang Daily, the organ of the Dongjiang Provincial Committee of the Chinese Communist Party. I did become a reporter at the newspaper. After the Yihong Courtyard was abolished, the provincial Puking Opera Theater was established. The former Yihong Courtyard was still frequented by handsome men and beautiful women and was filled with music, but everything had long been different, and the world had changed. Not long after the Mid-Autumn Festival in 1948, Old Catfish suddenly asked me to meet him at the Fatty's restaurant by the river. He had just returned from a secret meeting of the Provincial Party Committee in Niangzhou County, and he mainly wanted to convey the spirit of the meeting to me. With the liberation of the entire Northeast, our army's victories in North China and East China are escalating. The balance of power between the enemy and our forces has undergone major changes. The Liberation War has shifted from a strategic stalemate phase to a strategic counter-offensive. Chairman Mao and the Central Committee instructed the Dongjiang Provincial Committee to coordinate with the Dongjiang Military District and the Central Plains Field Army. They should launch an all-out counteroffensive against the Nationalist Army entrenched in Dongjiang Province. The focus of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee has also shifted from mobilizing the masses and exposing the reactionary rule of the Kuomintang to collecting military and political intelligence and conducting subversive and united front activities. As Old Catfish spoke, his steady gaze could not hide the excitement in his heart. To adapt to the new development situation and strengthen the leadership of the Dajiang Underground Work, the Provincial Committee has decided to send an important leader to guide the work of the Dajiang Working Committee. His name is Huang He. When Old Catfish said this, he put his mouth close to my ear and lowered his voice to the lowest volume.
Remember, after Comrade Huang He arrives, he will take over from me as your sole superior. He will also manage the liaison station. You can no longer contact me directly unless special circumstances occur.
I didn't understand what Old Catfish meant by special circumstances, and seeing the solemn expression on his face, I didn't dare to ask. 3 days later, one afternoon, I hired a rickshaw to go to South Lake Park to make contact with Huang He. Because it had been raining for several days, the roads were wet and slippery, and the sky was overcast, covered with dark clouds. Because the road surface was too slick and the rickshaw driver was old, the rickshaw was moving relatively slowly. When we were crossing the road, it rubbed against another rickshaw. The other driver was a young man. Hearing the old rickshaw driver's accent, he bullied him for being out of town and forced him to pay for damages. The two of them started arguing, and seeing that the time for the agreed meeting was approaching, I had no choice but to stop the matter. I pulled out 2 banknotes and gave them to the young man, and then let the old rickshaw driver take me on my way. Even so, I was still almost a quarter of an hour late when I arrived at South Lake Park. As soon as I got out of the rickshaw, I saw a person standing at the park entrance wearing a top hat, a long gray cloth gown, and an oil paper umbrella. The surrounding area was deserted. I stopped under a parasol tree, observing him from a distance. When I saw that he was holding a copy of the Dajiang Daily rolled up into a cylinder, I went over to him. At that time, the man in the long gown was facing away from me, facing the misty and rainy South Lake. He seemed not to have noticed my approach, or perhaps he had deliberately turned away from me. I stood behind him and recited a line of poetry. The clear skies reveal the trees of Hanyang. On Yingwu Isle the fragrant grasses grow. After a moment's thought, the other person recited softly. When I left, the willows were swaying gently. Now I come, the rain and snow are falling heavily. This was the secret code we had agreed on. "Comrade Huang He, welcome!" I called out, unable to suppress my excitement. The other person turned around slowly. When I saw his face, I couldn't help but be shocked. I never imagined this new important leader was my former superior, Song Qian-kun. He was also taken aback. "I never thought that Flying Dove would be you. Xiao Luo, it's me, Chief." I firmly held his hand. "I never expected it to be you. I only heard from the comrades in charge of the work committee that the person in charge of the liaison station is very young and was recently transferred from the military region." "I never expected it to be you," Song Qian-kun said, unable to conceal his joy. I grinned and stared at him. After not seeing him for a few years, the leader seemed to have gained some weight, and his demeanor was more refined and elegant, more like that of an intellectual. At this moment, Song Qian-kun put away his smile and became serious. He took out a pocket watch from his pocket, looked at it, and said in a reproachful tone, "You are a quarter of an hour late for the appointed time." I apologized and said, "I'm sorry, Chief. I was delayed on the way just now." "Don't call me Chief Flying Dove," he corrected sternly. "From now on, call me Mr. Huang." As he spoke, his eyes darted around, appearing slightly nervous. "Okay, Mr. Huang," I said in a tone of absolute obedience from a subordinate to a superior. Maintaining constant vigilance is the foremost principle for an underground worker. I fully understood the leader's slightly nervous reaction. When I first arrived at the liaison station, I was even more jittery than he was. This was the scene when I met the former head, Song Qian-kun, in Dajiang. As mentioned earlier, after the fall of Dajiang, a group of progressive students, including Bai Shui and me, joined the 5th Division of the new 4th Army under the leadership of Teacher Cheng Zuliang. Teacher Cheng served as the deputy head of the propaganda department of the division's political department, while Bai Shui was in the division's cultural troop. I also spent some time in the cultural troop. 2 years later, as an officer, I was transferred to the political office of the 3rd Detachment of the 5th Division of the new 4th Army. The director of the political office at that time was Song Qian-kun. When I worked at the division headquarters, I heard of Song Qian-kun's name. Before being transferred to the 3rd Detachment, he served as the section chief of the propaganda section in the political department of the division. It was said that he hailed from a prominent landlord family in Chuzhou. At the age of 15, he joined the revolution alongside his cousin and even led the Red Army guerrillas to betray their own family and eliminate their reactionary father. He once worked for a while in the Dongjiang Bureau of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China. He later made mistakes and was transferred to the 5th Division of the new 4th Army. At that time, young cadres like Song Qian-kun, who had rich revolutionary experience and had been tested in the flames of war, were rare in the ranks of the new 4th Army. Moreover, he indeed had excellent work abilities. Soon after being transferred to the 5th Division, he made the political and propaganda work of the entire division vibrant and colorful, earning praise from the military leaders. At that time, the 3rd Detachment of the 5th Division of the new 4th Army was operating near Niangzhu Lake, leveraging the advantages of the lakeside area to conduct flexible and maneuverable guerrilla warfare against the Japanese army. Not long ago, they even annihilated a Japanese motorboat squadron that had entered the lake for mopping up operations, capturing the squadron leader, Captain Suzuki, alive. When I left the division headquarters to report to the 3rd Detachment, I had just read a feature article about this lakeside sniper battle in the monthly magazine Frontier. A photo of Japanese Captain Suzuki accompanied the article, and it was signed, written and photographed by Song Qian-kun. The 3rd Detachment was stationed in a village called Daiujiawan on the banks of Niangzhu Lake. The 3 prominent leaders of the detachment, namely the commander, the political commissar, and the political office director, lived in a sizable tile-roofed house owned by a landlord. The house had 3 courtyards in front and back. It was midsummer then, and the 2 large locust trees in the courtyard swayed with their branches and leaves, covered with white flowers. The air was filled with a strong fragrance of locust flowers. Song Qian-kun lived in the back room. That was the first time I saw him. He was tall, wearing a well-fitting light gray military uniform. His eyes were bright and energetic, his chin was clean-shaven, and his uniform buttons were fastened meticulously. He looked refined, capable, and cultured, clearly an intellectual cadre with a good upbringing. When the messenger brought me in, Song Qian-kun was fiddling with a camera. When he heard that I had been transferred from the headquarters, he put down the camera and extended his hand.
"Oh, Comrade Luo Zheng, welcome."
As he warmly greeted me to sit down, he examined me with the unique gaze of a political cadre.
"I saw on your resume that you just turned 18. So young."
"Chief, you joined the revolution even younger than me," I said, sizing up Song Qian-kun. He looked to be in his 30s, which was quite young among the leaders at the detachment level. Considering that he joined the revolution so early and had studied at the Yan'an Anti-Japanese University, with such rich experience and versatility, being able to write articles and take photos, I immediately admired him. I took out the newly published Frontier magazine, still emitting the scent of ink, from my bag and respectfully handed it to Song Qian-kun with both hands. "Chief, this is the newly published Frontier, which includes your article and photos." Song Qian-kun took the magazine and quickly scanned his own article. I saw the camera and exclaimed, "Ah, a Leica 3D. It's even a foreign brand." "Chief, was that photo of the Japanese captain taken with this camera?" Song Qian-kun lifted his gaze from the magazine, glanced at me, and casually said,
"Yeah, you know about cameras too."
"Section Chief Cheng Zuliang from the propaganda department of the headquarters also enjoys photography, and I learned a bit from him," I said. Seeing that Song Qian-kun seemed unfamiliar with Cheng Zuliang's name, I added, "Oh, Section Chief Cheng was my teacher when I was studying at the affiliated high school of the Normal University. Since then, I have been working under the direct leadership of Song Qian-kun. Influenced by him, I also started learning writing during the intervals of brutal battles. Initially, it was short news reports, but gradually I wrote several more extended features and essays. Although I have loved literature since childhood, I only attended middle school for 2 years, so my writing skills are weak, and there are many grammatical and rhetorical errors in my articles. Every time I finish writing, I have to ask Song Qian-kun to help me revise it before sending it to the official publication Frontier of the headquarters and the newspaper of the military region. Some of them are rejected, while some are published. Gradually, I regarded Song Qian-kun as a mentor in writing. He not only revised my manuscripts, but also recommended some progressive literary and art books and periodicals such as Liberation Daily, Xinhua Daily, and articles from Literature magazine edited by Ding Ling, as well as Traveling on the Great Wall and The Northwest Corner of China by famous journalist Fan Changjiang. Of course, it also includes his own news and literary works published in the supplement of Liberation Daily and Frontier magazine. From 1940 to 1943, the period marked the most challenging phase of China's anti-Japanese war's aggression. Despite being far from the main forces of the 5th Division, the 3rd Detachment faced relentless encirclement by Japanese and puppet troops. They broke up their forces into smaller units, attacking each enemy stronghold individually, and launched repeated surprise attacks on the Japanese forces entrenched in the provincial capital, Dajiang and Niangzhou County, effectively diverting and dispersing the pressure on the main forces of the new Fourth Army. However, the 3rd Detachment also suffered brutal retaliation from the Japanese army. The Japanese and puppet troops stationed in Niangzhou County mobilized heavy forces and launched repeated sweeps into the Niangzhou Lake guerrilla area. At its worst, the 3rd Detachment was forced to retreat to a small island on Niangzhou Lake for over half a year, often enduring hunger and thirst. If they encountered Japanese and puppet troops sweeping into the lake, they had to relocate at any time, and the morale of the soldiers was understandably low. Song Qiankun often led comrades from the political department to visit the squads, telling stories to the soldiers to boost troop morale. He also personally composed lyrics for fishing drums and performed them in the squads. Despite the harsh battles, Song Qiankun wrote diaries every day, took numerous photos with his Leica 3D camera, and even wrote a short story titled Fighting on Niangzhou Lake. The story, which depicted a battle in which the 4th Company of the 3rd Detachment ambushed a Japanese motorboat in a reed marsh, was published in the supplement of the Liberation Daily and later included in the Anti-Japanese War Literary Series, Short Stories volume, edited by renowned writer Ding Ling. In the preface to the series, Ding Ling hailed Song Qiankun as a rising literary star in the anti-Japanese war literary team, and Commander Chen Yi personally praised him, describing him as a scholar general among the new Fourth Army. Inspired and influenced by Song Qiankun, I wrote several short stories depicting the battle life at Niangzhou Lake. After being revised by Song Qiankun, one was submitted to and published in the magazine Frontier. It was the only literary work I ever published. 2 years later, I was transferred to the propaganda department of the division headquarters. At that time, Song Qiankun was also transferred from the 3rd Detachment to serve as the deputy director of the political department of the newly established Dongjiang Provincial Military Region. After the Japanese Devils surrendered, I was transferred from the 5th Division of the new 4th Army to work in the Dongjiang Military Region. In contrast, Song Qiankun was transferred from the military region to the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee to serve as the Minister of Urban Work. My teacher, Cheng Zuliang, was also transferred to work with him in the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee. I never thought I would one day work under Song Qiankun's leadership again. As his former subordinate, I was naturally delighted. Song Qiankun once published works under the pen name Huang He in Qianshao. I should have known that Huang He was him, but at that time I was not aware that Huang He was his name before he joined the revolution, and Song Qiankun was changed after he announced his severance from his reactionary father Huang Yaozu. 5. Luo Zheng's narration. 2. Song Qiankun's public identity is a reporter for the Dajiang Daily. Song Qiankun serves as the Minister of Urban Work for the Provincial Party Committee, with full authority to guide the work of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee on behalf of the Provincial Party Committee. As the person in charge of the liaison station between the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Dajiang Underground Working Committee in Dajiang City, my duties include receiving and conveying important directives from the Provincial Party Committee, as well as delivering Song Qiankun's secret instructions to the Dajiang Working Committee. Another task of the liaison station and myself is to ensure his absolute safety. Despite the liaison station being located close to the Dajiang newspaper office, just a half-hour walk away for safety reasons, I rarely meet directly with Song Qiankun. Whenever I receive a telegram from the Provincial Party Committee, I use the opportunity to contact the newspaper office to place an advertisement and deliver it to him. Suppose he needs to report to the Provincial Party Committee or issue instructions to the Dajiang Working Committee. In that case, he will encode the content into a password, write it into an article, and publish it in the daily Dajiang newspaper. Song Qiankun usually does not sign his name for the news he collects and writes. He only signs his name for commentary articles. He uses many pen names, no less than 10, including Jiang Chengzi, Xifeng Shoma, Huai Sha, etc. Only in articles signed Huang He do his secret instructions hide. The People's Bookstore is one of the special distribution points for the Dazhang Daily. It's close to the newspaper office, so every morning we are among the first to receive the newspaper of the day as soon as the delivery truck emerges from the printing plant. Once we see an article signed by Huang He appearing in the newspaper, we must send it out via the radio at our earliest convenience. The radio is located in the attic. Whenever we send a message, I have to hang out the stock-taking sign outside the bookstore, close the door, and hide in the attic with Xiaohe. I am responsible for compiling the code, while Xiaohe is responsible for sending the message. The Morse code we use is hidden in the novel La Dame aux Camélias by Alexander Dumas Fils. Song Qiankun and I each have a copy, both published by Beijing Bookstore in 1931. I memorized the entire novel from cover to cover to familiarize myself with the code. Before coming to Dayang, I received a 1-month short-term training in the military region's special training class. The instructor was a spy expert sent from Yan'an, and one of the main contents was to weave and decipher codes. In mid-November 1948, Song Qiankun left Dajiang under the guise of an interview and traveled to Chengmezhuang, Niangzhou County, the secret base of the Provincial Party Committee, to participate in an important joint meeting between the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the Dongjiang Military Region. One day after I returned to the bookstore from an errand, Xiao He put down what he was doing as soon as he saw me. He came over and whispered, "Huang He is here, waiting for you in the attic." I felt a bit surprised. According to the discipline of underground work, Huang He was not supposed to meet me directly at the bookstore unless there were exceptional circumstances. I muttered to myself and hurriedly made my way to the attic. Pushing open the door to the attic, I saw Song Qiankun wearing a dark blue wool coat, a beige suit underneath, and a red tie. Due to the cold weather, he also had a beige scarf around his neck. Compared to when he first arrived at Dajiang a few months ago, his attire and demeanor now resembled those of a senior journalist. At that moment, he sat cross-legged in a chair by the window, casually browsing through the newly published Dajiang newspaper. His composed demeanor didn't suggest any exceptional circumstances had arisen, and my anxious heart immediately felt a lot more at ease. However, I still couldn't help but ask, "Comrade Huang He, why did you come directly to the store? Is there a problem?"
"What could possibly go wrong?" Song Qiankun asked in return. "If something really goes wrong, it's not a bad thing, but a good thing, a great good thing." I was utterly puzzled, and was still in a daze when Song Qiankun suddenly burst out laughing. After laughing, he put down the newspaper and said excitedly, "The victory of the Huaihai campaign is assured. Last month, our army completely annihilated Chiang Kai-shek's trump card. The 74th Division and its commander, Lieutenant General Zhang Lingfu, was killed. The 5th Corps, commanded by Liu Ji with 55 divisions, suffered nearly 500,000 casualties. Coupled with the enemies annihilated in the Liaoning-Shenyang campaign, the balance of power between the enemy and ourselves has fundamentally reversed. The situation is gratifying and pressing." As he spoke, his eyes sparkled, and he rubbed his fists together as if he had just come down from the battlefield. Last month, the Party Central Committee held a Politburo meeting in Shibaipo, establishing the task of transitioning from guerrilla warfare to regular warfare, building a military of 5 million, annihilating 500 enemy brigades, and fundamentally defeating the Kuomintang reactionaries in about 5 years. This joint meeting of the Provincial Party Committee and the military region is to convey the spirit of the central meeting and make new arrangements for our province's next step in the struggle against the enemy. His expression turned serious as he continued. "In order to coordinate with the upcoming nationwide strategic counteroffensive, our province's urban anti-enemy work should also take the initiative and act actively. From the original mobilization of the masses and intelligence gathering, we should shift to dividing, disintegrating, infiltrating, and plotting against the enemy forces. The Provincial Party Committee has made new arrangements for the anti-enemy struggle in Dajiang. Xiao Luo, you should immediately notify the comrades of the Underground Working Committee to come to the bookstore for a meeting tomorrow."
Bookstore? I asked in disbelief. According to the regulations, bookstores are not allowed to hold meetings as an important liaison station. Fatsing my questions, Song Qiankun furrowed his brows and said,
Comrade, the situation is vastly different from a few months ago. The complete collapse of the Kuomintang's reactionary regime is imminent. Our underground work must adapt to the new situation. We can no longer be like women with bound feet, fearful of every step we take. We must unleash our hands and work boldly. Perhaps influenced by Song Qiankun's optimism, I abandoned my usual caution and immediately drafted an advertisement. My father will celebrate his 71st birthday tomorrow. We plan to hold a birthday banquet on such and such a date. We sincerely invite all friends and relatives to attend. This is the secret code we agreed upon for the meeting between Old Catfish and me. I originally wanted to ask Song Qiankun to bring it to the newspaper for publication, but out of caution, I decided to have Xiaohe deliver it personally. After arranging everything, Song Qiankun's expression relaxed. By the way, Xiao Luo, guess who I met during the meeting? Who is it? What, have you forgotten your fiancé? I realized then that Song Qiankun was referring to Bai Shui. Originally, Bai Shu and I had planned to get married this year, but the wedding plans had to be postponed due to my sudden transfer to Dajiang. We hadn't been in touch for half a year, and at this moment, hearing news about her, I couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. Bai Shu, is she okay? Half a year ago, Bai Shui was transferred from the cultural troop to the military hospital as a propaganda officer. She was temporarily assigned to serve at this provincial party committee meeting, Song Qiankun said. By the way, she asked me to bring you a book. With that, he took out a thin little book from his briefcase and handed it to me. I took it and saw it was the story of Zhou Ya and Shu La, published by the New Culture Publishing House. The New Culture Publishing House was the first publishing house led by our party, established after the liberation of Northeast China. It translated and published several Soviet literary works such as Iron Flow, Destruction, and The Cavalry. Last year, I also asked my comrades in the Northeast to buy a copy of How the Steel Was Tempered for Bai Shu. Before coming to Dajiang, I gave her a Darub pistol I had captured from the enemy. Now, Bai Shu asked former leader Song Qiankun to bring this copy of the story of Zoya and Shura to show her unwavering belief in the revolution. Since we fell in love, we often encourage each other this way. Suddenly, the beautiful figure of Bai Shui and her clear and bright eyes like lake water appeared in my mind. 2 days later, a special meeting of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee was held in secret on the attic floor of the People's Bookstore. I, as the person in charge of the liaison station, attended the meeting as a non-voting delegate, even though I was not a member of the working committee. At the meeting, Song Qiankun conveyed the spirit of the joint meeting between the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the military region, introduced the situation of the national battlefield, and proposed an 8-character guideline for the next phase of the working committee's work. Take the initiative and be proactive. Who would have known that this 8-character guideline sparked objections from some members of the working committee? In particular, the head of the working committee, Old Catfish, explicitly expressed his opposition. Based on his long-term underground work experience, he pointed out that although there had been a significant change in the balance of power between the enemy and ourselves on the front lines across the country, Dajiang City and even most areas of the province were still firmly controlled by the Kuomintang military police. The party organizations and progressive forces were constantly facing various dangers. Especially when the enemy faced defeat, they would fight like cornered animals and carry out even more frenzied destruction and retaliation against our party's underground organizations. Under such circumstances, the underground work in Dajiang must be more cautious rather than blindly taking the initiative to avoid unnecessary losses. Song Qiankun severely criticized Old Catfish's viewpoint, believing that he had not grasped the essence of the Politburo meeting and the joint meeting of the Provincial Party Committee and the military region. In the face of the new situation,
He clung to outdated ideas and made the mistake of right-wing conservatism. However, Old Catfish did not accept this criticism, and the two men were at loggerheads, neither able to persuade the other. Old Catfish, with a livid face, kept smoking non-stop. "Comrade Huang He, according to our intelligence, the Military Intelligence and the Central Intelligence Bureau are preparing to launch a large-scale purge operation against our underground organization in Dazhang City, attempting to recover from the crushing defeat they suffered on the front battlefield. Just yesterday, our party organization at the Dongjiang shipyard was suddenly sabotaged, and the whereabouts of 2 party members are unknown. We must not act blindly so as not to bring greater losses to the organization. Should we just hide like underground mice, doing nothing but waiting for victory to come, just because the enemy is temporarily strong?" Song Qiankun paced back and forth in the attic, feeling somewhat agitated. "Comrade Old Catfish, you don't seem like someone who has engaged in long-term underground struggles. You look like a recruit who just stepped onto the battlefield, and your courage is shattered before the enemy even fires a shot." Upon hearing this, Old Catfish's face immediately darkened. "Comrade Huang He, what you said is an insult to me. Underground work is unlike fighting with the enemy on the battlefield with bayonets." Song Qiangkun's face turned ugly, and the atmosphere in the meeting place became tense. At that moment, Xiao He, responsible for guarding downstairs, came upstairs to report that several suspicious people had appeared outside the bookstore. Just now, a young man in student attire tried to break into the attic under the pretext of buying books, but I stopped him. I didn't dare to be careless, so I quickly reported the situation to Song Qiankun and Old Catfish. The meeting had not yet reached a unified decision, and Song Qiankun seemed hesitant. Old Catfish furrowed his brows and pondered for a moment, then suddenly tossed aside the half-smoked cigarette butt and decisively said, "Let's retreat immediately." Song Qiankun hesitated for a moment and agreed as well. Just as Song Qiankun, Old Catfish, and others left, several secret agents sneaked in and searched the bookstore from top to bottom. Although Song Qiankun and the comrades of the working committee were unharmed, I realized that the liaison station had already aroused the enemy's suspicion, and this search might just be a signal. Less than a month after this incident, I read a news report from the Nanjing Central News Agency in the Dazhang Daily that Chiang Kai-shek, in an attempt to recover from the defeat on the Huaihai battlefield, ordered Bai Chongxi, the commander of the Central China Suppression Headquarters, to mobilize 2 Army Corps and 15 divisions, totaling 200,000 troops, to launch a large-scale attack on our Dongjiang Liberation Aruha. The Kuomintang news has always been fond of bluffing and fabricating fake news, so I didn't take it too seriously. However, that very night, the liaison station received a top-secret telegram from the Provincial Party Committee to Song Qiankun. The gist of the telegram was that in order to avoid the Kuomintang army led by Bai Chongxi's attempt to encircle our liberated areas like an iron wall, the Provincial Party Committee decided to transfer the main forces of the military region to the northern mountainous areas. The Provincial Party Committee organs would lead the military region's general hospital to hide on Phoenix Island in Niangzhu Lake to command the military and civilians' fight against the enemy nearby and prepare for the upcoming strategic counteroffensive. The telegram also proposed the requirement of preserving ourselves and waiting for the right moment for the work of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee. Compared to Song Qiankun's 8-character principle of taking the initiative and being proactive, the Provincial Party Committee's new 8-character principle had undergone significant changes. I was well aware of the importance of the instructions from the Provincial Party Committee. The next morning, I delivered the telegram content, written in code, to Song Qiankun's mailbox at the Dajiang newspaper. I was constantly uneasy after returning to the bookstore from the newspaper office. Fatsing the enemy's heavy invasion, the Provincial Party Committee was hiding near Niangzhu Lake, bearing great danger. When I thought that the military hospital where Bai Shui worked was also moving along with the Provincial Party Committee, my heart became even more uneasy. 2 days later, I suddenly received an urgent signal from Old Catfish asking to meet me. According to the rules, he was not allowed to meet me unless there were special circumstances directly. When I hurriedly arrived at the Fatty's restaurant where we used to meet, Old Catfish had already arrived. He wore a worn-out cotton jacket with cotton wadding falling out and an old felt hat with the brim pulled down low. He sat in the corner of the restaurant. As soon as he saw me enter, he stood up and walked outside. He winked when he passed by me, and I followed him towards the riverbank. Soon we arrived at the riverbank, one after the other. A few fish eagles were flying over the river, and no one was around. Old Catfish took off his felt hat and fanned himself vigorously. I was surprised to find that his forehead was covered with sweat beads despite the cold weather. As expected, before I could ask, Old Catfish said urgently, "Flying Dove! Something's wrong!" Old Catfish's face was gloomy, and his voice was low, but it sounded like a thunderbolt to me. My breathing suddenly quickened. "What? What's wrong?" "Last night, Old K sent me an important piece of intelligence. The key leader of the Military Intelligence Bureau in Dongjiang Province, Bai Shouhu, has obtained a top-secret intelligence and is currently carrying out a top-secret operation called the Trojan Horse Plan, targeting the Dazhang Underground Working Committee and the Dongjiang Provincial Committee." The Trojan Horse Plan. I pondered these words, recalling the telegram from the Provincial Party Committee and Bai Shui I had received just 2 days ago. My heart skipped a beat. Is the intelligence reliable? Who is Old K? Absolutely reliable. Old K was a comrade we planted within the military intelligence during the anti-Japanese war, and he has been in single-line contact with me, Old Catfish said solemnly.
What's more serious is that Old K also revealed that the intelligence Bai Shouhu possesses comes from a high-ranking figure in our organization.
High-ranking figures? I looked at Old Catfish, trying to grasp the meaning of his words. You mean, since the outbreak of the anti-Japanese war, Bai Shouhu has been responsible for the Military Intelligence Agency's efforts to recruit and turn against our party organization. He is a cunning and crafty fellow. It is said that his coup de grace was the defection of Zhang Da, the former leader of the Dongjiang Bureau. Old Catfish said evasively, completely different from his usual straightforward and forthright demeanor. I couldn't help but get a bit impatient. Old Catfish, what exactly are you trying to say?
I didn't say anything.
Old Catfish avoided my gaze. After a moment, he retracted his gaze and stared at me.
In any case, the situation is very critical. In the past 2 days, suspicious people have been spotted around several of our transportation stations. You should also be on high alert, and it's best to transfer immediately.
Should we consult Comrade Huang He? I asked.
What's important is the safety of the Provincial Party Committee's offices, Old Catfish thought and said irrelevantly. How about this? You should immediately send a telegram to the Provincial Party Committee, asking them to relocate from their current concealed location as soon as possible.
I have an ominous feeling. Old Catfish swallowed the latter half of the sentence. Why didn't he explicitly reply whether he had consulted Huang He? But his expression already told me the answer. I felt that he was deliberately avoiding something. The situation was critical, and I couldn't afford to think further. I looked at Old Catfish with concern and asked, "What about you?"
"Don't mind me. The safety of the Provincial Party Committee is the most important thing," he said, tightly squeezing my hand, pulling down his hat brim and rushing away. As I watched the Old Catfish's receding figure, an ominous premonition surged up in my mind. After breaking up with Old Catfish that day, I returned to the bookstore. Before I could send a message to the provincial committee, the bookstore was surrounded by secret agents. In a panic, Xiaohei and I jumped from the attic. Bullets rained down on us. I was shot in the back as I jumped and immediately fainted. Later, I learned that while secret agents raided the People's Bookstore, Song Qian-kun was also secretly arrested. Thanks to Old Catfish's early warning, several leaders of the Dazhang Working Committee were able to escape before the agents made their move. However, the agents caught Old Catfish.
After killing several enemies, he detonated the explosives strapped to his body and sacrificed heroically. After Song Qiankun and I were arrested, we were detained at the Military Intelligence Agency South Lake Detention Center. They used every trick in the book on me, subjecting me to severe torture. I can't recall how many times I was force-fed chili water or subjected to the tiger bench. There were moments when I felt like I couldn't take it anymore. But the thought of the book, The Story of Zoya and Shura, that Bai Shui gave me through Song Qiankun gave me immense strength. Once, Bai Shouhu personally interrogated me. That was the first time I met the top leader of the military intelligence Dongjiang Station. He had a horse-like face, and his Zhongshan suit seemed to be hanging on a hanger due to being too thin. Seeing that I was beaten all over, he put on a merciful look, hypocritically scolding his subordinates for using too much force. He also promised to send me to the United States immediately if I could provide the contact information of the underground organization in Dajiang. This approach was ineffective, so Bai Shouhu resorted to a new trick. Actually, it doesn't matter whether you confess or not. We just want to give you a chance to repent and start anew, he said with a forced smile. Your former boss, Mr. Song Qiankun, knows much more than you do. I knew right away that Bai Shouhu was lying. Although the Provincial Party Committee entrusted Song Qiankun to be fully responsible for the work of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee, all his contacts with the committee were through me, and he was unaware of the specific contact information and locations of the committee leaders. Besides, I don't believe that the former leader would defect. As we were kept in separate cells, I knew nothing about Song Qiankun's situation in prison. I only saw him twice during outdoor exercise, but it was just a distant glance through the wire mesh, and I had no chance to talk to him. I saw Song Qiankun wearing a neatly tailored suit, with his buttons fastened meticulously. Despite being imprisoned and having several visible scars on his face from torture, he looked dignified and calm. At that time, I was ready to make sacrifices. I never expected that 6 months later I and the former chief Song Qiankun would be unexpectedly released. Later, I learned that with the central government's approval, the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee and the military region decided to rescue us by exchanging 2 captured Kuomintang generals. Just after I got out of prison, I heard the news that the Provincial Party Committee and the Provincial Military Region General Hospital had been ambushed by the enemy at Niangzhu Lake, resulting in the deaths of over 100 cadres, civilians, and the wounded and sick. Among them was my fiancé, Bai Shui. 6. Luo Zheng's narration. 3. After the liberation of the Dajiang, I was transferred to the newly established Dongjiang Daily as a reporter. Soon after, I joined the land reform work team and went to Phoenix Island in Niangzhu County to participate in the land reform. 2 years ago, it was on this very island that the Home Returning Corps and the Kuomintang Regular Army ambushed the Provincial Party Committee office and the Military Region General Hospital. Bai Shui, along with over 100 cadres, soldiers, and civilians, including Zheng Hao, secretary of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee, and Cheng Zuliang, deputy director of the Provincial Party Committee's Enemy Work Department, were brutally killed. Standing in front of the graves of the martyrs, a lingering doubt that had haunted me for a long time persisted in my mind. The concealment of the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region General Hospital on Phoenix Island was a temporary decision made by the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region, and it was a top secret. After the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region General Hospital were transferred from Niangzhu County to Phoenix Island, all contact with the outside world was cut off, and the only channel for leaks was through the radio station. At that time, only one radio station on Phoenix Island belonged to the Provincial Party Committee. Before the enemy's surprise attack, this radio station had only sent 2 telegrams to the outside world. One was a report from the Provincial Party Committee to the central government asking for instructions on the next step of work, and the second was an instruction sent to Song Qiankun and the Dajiang Underground Working Committee. However, just as I handed this telegram to Song Qiankun, the Dajiang Working Committee and the liaison station were destroyed by agents. Analyzing from the time chain, among the leaders of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee, Song Qiankun was the only insider who knew about the concealment of the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region Hospital on Phoenix Island. Realizing this, a layer of cold sweat broke out on my spine. Could it be, recalling the evasive tone Old Fish used when he mentioned him the last time I saw Old Catfish, as well as the words spoken by the head of the military intelligence agents, Bai Shouhu? And during my interrogation, I dare not think further. From that moment on, I began to suspect Song Qiankun of leaking the top-secret information about the concealment of the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region General Hospital on Phoenix Island. Song Qiankun was not only my former leader but also the top leader of the Dajiang Underground Working Committee on the eve of liberation. In terms of professional relationships and personal feelings, I find it hard to believe my own suspicions. However, I cannot help but admit that, based on the clues I have, every doubt seems to point to Song Qiankun. But suspicion is just that, suspicion, and I have no evidence whatsoever. Unfortunately, due to the urgency of the situation, Old Catfish didn't have time to identify this senior leader, or perhaps he already knew who it was, but he sacrificed before he could tell me. Apart from Old Catfish, the only person who might know about this senior leader is Lao Ke. Through various sources, I learned that on the eve of the liberation of the mainland, Lao Ke followed the Kuomintang, KMT, to retreat to Taiwan. After continuing to hide for over a year due to betrayal by a traitor, Lao Ke and a group of our underground party comrades who were hiding in important military intelligence departments in Taiwan were all secretly executed by the KMT. The only possible source of evidence that could reveal who leaked our party's top-secret intelligence has been cut off. Although the clues were interrupted, the suspicion took root in my heart. Whenever I thought of Bai Shui and the more than 100 martyrs killed by the enemy, my heart felt as if it was being gnawed by 10,000 worms, making it difficult for me to sleep or eat. In 1953, the nation launched the massive 3 anti- and 5 anti-movements, during which a large number of enemy agents and corrupt elements hidden in party and government organizations at all levels were exposed by the masses and received due punishment. Therefore, I sent a letter of accusation to the relevant departments of the central and provincial governments, explicitly identifying Song Qiankun as a suspected traitor and requesting that the organization investigate him. More than a month after the letter was sent, the supervisory departments of the central government and Dongjiang province sent people to find me and verify the issues raised in the letter of accusation one by one. Soon after, Song Qiankun was suspended from his duties for investigation. However, I felt a mix of joy and anxiety. On one hand, I was glad that the higher authorities had finally begun to investigate the bloodshed caused by the destruction of the Underground Working Committee of the Dajiang before liberation by agents, as well as the surprise attack on the Provincial Party Committee and the Military Region General Hospital on Phoenix Island by the enemy. On the other hand, I was worried because at that time I was a reporter in the rural department of the Dongjiang Daily, and Song Qiankun was the deputy director of the Provincial Party Committee's propaganda department in charge of literature and journalism, still being my superior. If my suspicion turned out to be wrong, how could I face him? Unfortunately, my concerns were confirmed. A year later, the relevant department concluded after an investigation that there was no evidence to prove that Song Qiankun had betrayed the party's secrets during his tenure as the Minister of the Urban Work Department of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee. Song Qiankun was quickly reinstated to his former position, and a few years later he was promoted to the Minister of the Provincial Party Committee's Propaganda Department and also became a member of the Standing Committee of the Provincial Party Committee and a secretary of the Secretariat. From then on, my bad luck began. Initially, the newspaper was planning to promote me to the position of director of the rural department, but after this incident, there was no further mention of it. Before this, the newspaper leaders knew that Song Qiankun was my former superior and treated me very politely. However, after this, the leaders all gave me the cold shoulder and ignored me. What's worse, the news of my reporting on Song Qiankun spread throughout the newspaper. Over time, the reporting turned into framing, and many colleagues avoided me like the plague, treating me like a stranger, afraid of being implicated. Once, when Song Qiankun came to inspect the newspaper, several colleagues and I shook his hand as he walked into our office, accompanied by the leaders. However, he ignored my outstretched hand as if he didn't know me. My promotion to the position of director of the rural department at the newspaper was thus dashed. In 1966, the Cultural Revolution broke out. Many high-ranking cadres became targets of criticism and denunciation overnight, being labeled as traitors and internal traitors and capitalist roaders. Due to reporting on Song Qiankun, I had always been regarded as an outlier and sidelined in the newspaper for over a decade. At this time, I couldn't help but be eager to join the rebel organization Iron Flow Corps on the provincial cultural and educational news front. The first poster I posted was titled, "Who Betrayed the Dazhang Underground Working Committee and the Martyrs in the Phoenix Island Massacre?" It once again raised doubts about Song Qiankun. At the onset of the Cultural Revolution, Song Qiankun and several other provincial leaders were labeled as capitalist roaders and sidelined. After my big character poster was posted, Song Qiankun was also labeled as a traitor and internal spy and imprisoned. Soon, I became a member of Dongjiang Daily's Revolutionary Committee and the Rural Edition's chief editor. In 1971, shortly after Lin Biao's death in Wenduerhan, Song Qiankun and many other veteran cadres were liberated and returned to their leadership positions. Then, I was quietly dismissed. No one told me the reason for my dismissal, but I knew in my heart that it was all related to the comeback of the old leader Song Qiankun. In 1976, shortly after the downfall of the Gang of Four, I was isolated and investigated as one of the 3 types of people and was sentenced to prison. Coincidentally, the Dongjiang Second Prison where I served my sentence, commonly referred to as Prison Number 2, was once a detention center for the Kuomintang's Military Intelligence Bureau. Before liberation, Song Qiankun and I were also imprisoned here after being arrested. Second Prison is located near the south shore of South Lake, surrounded by rolling hills. It faces South Lake Park across the lake. At night, from the barred window of the prison cell, one can see the bright lights on the urban roads on the other side of the lake. Compared to the former Kuomintang Military Intelligence Detention Center, Second Prison has doubled in size. Previously, only one prison building could accommodate up to 100 prisoners at most. The road leading to the city was winding and bumpy. Now, not only has the road become a spacious concrete road, but 3 more prison buildings have been added, accommodating at least 500 prisoners. Number 4 is for women, while the other 3 are for men. A tall iron fence separates the men's and women's prisons, including the dining halls, which are also divided into men's and women's dining halls and exercise areas. A library in the prison is open to both men and women once a week, but few people go in. This is because there are few books, and everyone is uninterested in reading. I am an exception. Whenever the library is open, I always go in to read. The collection of books in the library was pitifully small. Apart from the works of Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Mao Zedong, as well as party newspapers and journals such as People's Daily, Red Flag Magazine, and Dongjiang Daily, there were few books and publications worth reading. But even so, I spent half a day in the library. I read a set of 100,000 Whys with great interest for some time. This set of books, published during the Cultural Revolution, contained common scientific knowledge in daily life, which was easy to understand, interesting, and practical. There were dozens of volumes in total, and it was very popular. Due to being too busy, I never had time to read it carefully. I never thought that I would find this opportunity in prison. After reading the entire set of books, I felt that I had gained much knowledge and benefited greatly. One day, I was sitting at a table in the corner of the library, engrossed in a book called 100,000 Whys. when suddenly a voice sounded in my ear. "Hello, Comrade Biota Mountain." The pure Mandarin with a slight rhoticized accent surprised me. Since entering prison, whether among prisoners or correctional officers, they have only referred to my prison number, rarely using my name, let alone Biota Mountain. This was the name I used when participating in the Iron Flow Corps, a rebel organization on the cultural and educational news front in Dongjiang Province during the Cultural Revolution, and no one has called me by this name for many years. I raised my head in surprise and saw a woman standing before me. To be exact, she was a foreign woman. She was wearing a numbered prison uniform and was slightly older than me. Despite the fine crow's feet around her eyes, she still retained her charm, exuding an extraordinary aura, especially her eyes, which were as deep and blue as lake water. "Is it you, Comrade Biota Mountain?" she repeated. At this moment, I also recognized her. Ms. Anna Louise, my comrade in arms in the Iron Flow Corps back then and a renowned international friend. "It's me, Comrade Ying Shenhong." I also called out the name Anna Louise used in the Iron Flow Corps. Our hands were tightly clasped together. Speaking of Anna Louise, she is a legendary figure. Born in the UK, she devoted herself to the international communist movement in her youth. Her first husband was Zhang Da, who once served as a leader of the Dongjiang Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and defected to the Kuomintang during the anti-Japanese War. Later, she married Song Qiankun, who had once served as Zhang Da's security staff. In the late 1950s, Anna Louise and Song Qiankun divorced. At the beginning of the Cultural Revolution, Anna, as a foreign expert enjoying special treatment at the Provincial Broadcasting Bureau, was the first to stand up and propose the cancellation of her special treatment, demanding to share weal and woe with the masses of workers and peasants, and actively applied to work and train at the May 7th Cadre School. According to her exposure, Song Qiankun's life was extremely decadent. Not only did he engage in promiscuous relationships with women and seduce female nurses in a sanatorium, but he also instructed the Dongjiang Iron and Steel Plant to customize a bathtub for each of the secretaries of the Provincial Party Committee using special steel. At that time, Song Qiankun was already the secretary of the Secretariat of the Provincial Party Committee and the deputy governor, holding a high position and wielding great power. Anna Louise's exposure made him the first provincial leader to be removed from power in Dongjiang Province. It was after reading Anna Louise's big character poster that I wrote the big character poster titled, "Who Betrayed the Underground Working Committee of Dajiang and the Martyrs in the Phoenix Island Massacre." The big character poster written by Anna Louise and I marked the beginning of the criticism of the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee. Before this, under the control of Song Qiankun and others, the Cultural Revolution in Dongjiang Province shifted the main direction of the struggle, turning the criticism of the capitalist faction within the party into a criticism of the landlords, rich peasants, counter-revolutionaries, and rightists, and the destruction of the Four Olds. This incited the masses to fight against each other, ultimately leading to the July 20th physical confrontation that resulted in the deaths of 2 workers. After the incident, Premier Zhou Enlai and the Central Cultural Revolution Group sent an investigation team to reorganize the Dongjiang Provincial Party Committee. At the criticism meeting of Song Qiankun and others, Anna and I spoke as representatives of the Iron Flow Corps. We were simultaneously selected as attendants of the Iron Flow Corps, becoming famous rebel leaders in Dongjiang Province. Wearing Red Guard armbands, we marched at the forefront of the parade, shouting revolutionary slogans and Chairman Mao's latest instructions. "You must care about national affairs and carry the great proletarian cultural revolution through to the end." Our voices echoed through the loudspeakers so loud and clear. However, the vigorous rebellion movement declined 3 years later, and the Iron Flow Corps was also disbanded. At the same time, Song Qiankun, imprisoned 3 years ago, was liberated again. Soon after, I heard the shocking news. Anna Louise, an international friend and one of the leaders of the rebellion on the cultural and news front in Dongjiang province, was suddenly arrested, and the charge was British spy. Since then, I haven't heard any news about Anna Louise. I never expected you to be locked up here. I didn't expect you to be here too. Anna Louise and I sized each other up, our inner sentiments overflowing beyond words. Once powerful rebel comrades, we have now both become prisoners. Is this a tragedy or a comedy? We both saw a complex expression of confusion and helplessness on each other's faces. From that day on, Anna and I often took advantage of our time in the library to converse. We talked a lot. She had been in prison for 5 years, and loneliness and depression had made her exceptionally talkative. Sometimes our conversations almost turned into a monologue or a narrative from her, like the protagonist in a Shakespearean play, with me as her audience, the only audience. I was once a fervent anarchist. During my studies at the University of Leeds, I came into contact with the works of German female revolutionary Rosa Luxemburg. I could recite her letters from prison almost backward. We are in an era of radical change, preparing to face the storm. Like a battle cry. How inspiring. Rosa Luxemburg vehemently opposed Bernstein, calling his ideas a corrosive agent of revolution and the fiercest enemy of Marxism. She believed that only through a proletarian revolution could the bourgeois rule be overthrown and socialism be realized. The so-called parliamentary path was nothing but a petty bourgeois illusion. Prior to this, the British intellectual community was deeply influenced by Bernsteinism, opposing violent revolution and advocating moderate social reforms through Parliament. Europe was still asleep, and Rosa's ideas brought new hope to us young people wandering in confusion. I was deeply attracted by her and began to believe in Marxism-Leninism, shifting my gaze from Europe to Russia and China. The world revolution was shifting from the West to the East. The proletariat began to ascend to the historical stage. During the summer vacation of 1926, I met Zhang Da, a communist studying in London, the UK. Zhang Da came from Zhejiang province, the richest province in China, with a typical Oriental face, profound knowledge, elegant temperament, and romanticism. He liked the poetry of Shelley and Heine, which undoubtedly had a special attraction for me, who had just begun to believe in communism. Moreover, I admired Rosa Luxemburg so much, not only for her ideas but also for her life experiences. In particular, the love between Rosa Luxemburg and Yogis was even more fascinating to me. Rosa Luxemburg had written over 900 letters to Yogis, in which she called him a pair of golden eyes. From then on, I was also looking for a lover with golden eyes. The appearance of Zhang Da made me believe that I had found my revolutionary with golden eyes. Later, I followed Zhang Da to the distant and unfamiliar China and became a member of the Communist Party of China. From the anti-Japanese War and the Liberation War to the founding of New China, I experienced Zhang Da's betrayal, but I never wavered in my belief. I regarded myself as an ordinary Communist Party member and devoted myself to the revolution and construction of this country, including the Cultural Revolution. I have always believed that the Cultural Revolution was a valuable experiment conducted by the Proletarian Party after gaining political power to prevent capitalist restoration and adhere to the socialist path. It represented a Chinese-style solution to the global challenge of the second day of the revolution. Unfortunately, it ultimately failed. Trotsky's theory of world revolution was proven wrong by Lenin. Still, Trotsky's idea of permanent revolution is interconnected with Chairman Mao's theory of continuing the revolution under the dictatorship of the proletariat. Chairman Mao has always been against Trotskyism. I didn't know much about Trotsky's world revolution theory, so I retorted unconvincingly, "Besides, they all failed." The sparkle in Anna Louise's eyes dimmed abruptly, as if a water basin had been poured over them. "Yes, it's all failed. Everything has failed," she murmured, her eyes filled with deep sorrow. "Comrade Anna, how will history and future generations evaluate us?" I asked her a question that had been weighing on my mind for a long time. Song Qiankun came to visit me in prison once and also raised this question to me, but he did so in the tone of a victor, Anna said sarcastically. On the surface, he appears magnanimous, but in reality, he strongly desires revenge. As soon as he was liberated, he sent me to prison on charges of being a British spy. I recalled my experiences over the past few decades due to reporting and accusing Song Qiankun, and my heart was filled with mixed feelings. A suffocating silence ensued. Our conversations often go like this. They start well, but suddenly break off, like a pot of extinguished charcoal fire. I still remember my last conversation with Anna Louise in the prison library. "I'm about to be released from prison," she said, gazing at a spider on the wall, her face devoid of joy. It seemed as if she was not telling me happy news worthy of celebration, but rather some sad, bad news. "Congratulations, Comrade Ying Shenhong." My words were sincere, but also somewhat insincere. "What are your plans after being released from prison?" "I'm leaving China and returning to England," she said calmly. When she uttered these words, it seemed very difficult for her, as if what came out of her mouth wasn't a sentence but pebbles. "I spent most of my life in China, and I really don't want to leave. Originally, I planned to live with my son after getting out of prison, but not long ago, I received the terrible news that he suddenly and mysteriously disappeared." "Your son?" I was taken aback. "Zhong Xiaotian, the son of Zhong Da and me. After I married Song Qiankun, I asked him to change his surname to Song. After my divorce from Song Qiankun, I asked him to change his surname back to Zhong." Anna Louise spoke quickly as if she wanted to end the conversation as soon as possible. "Zhong Xiaotian is a child with a strange temperament, decadent and willful, even dissolute, a bit like his father, Zhong Da. He teaches at Dongjiang University. Since I went to prison, he signed up to go to the countryside to work and settle down, taking a female college student named Gu Ying with him. They got married in a small town called Pai Town and had children. I wrote him several letters, but I didn't receive a single reply." "But why did he disappear?" "I don't know either. That's what the leader of Zhong Xiaotian's unit told me," Anna Louise shrugged and said. "Zhong Da also mysteriously disappeared in the same way. They are so alike, even in the way they disappeared. There are many such disappearances in the history of the international communist movement. I remember that Trotsky also disappeared in this way. Some people say Stalin's agents killed him. When Zhong Da and I were in the Soviet Union, we met Stalin once, but I don't believe he would do such a thing." I realized that Anna Louise was really leaving China. "And you, Comrade Biota Mountain?" she asked in a tone of concern that only comrades would use. "After being released from prison, will you continue to accuse Song Qiankun?" I detected a hint of sarcasm in her voice, and I knew the unspoken implication behind her words was, "Aren't you afraid that Song Qiankun will once again send you to prison on trumped-up charges?" But I didn't answer. Chapter 4, 1. The Scenery of Two People. The editorial department of Lang Taosha was located on the top floor of Building 6 in Osmanthus Garden. Originally, this building had only 5 floors, but an additional floor was added later. The staircases were all independent. Initially, the logistics department of Dongjiang University operated here. After the logistics department built a separate office building, the Student Union, the Federation of University Student Organizations, abbreviated as FUSO, and the editorial department of University Student Journal moved in. These student organizations previously did not have separate office spaces. Whenever they held activities, they were like guerrillas, shooting from one place to another. Since moving into the office, they had felt like a black chicken turning into a phoenix, or a motley crew turning into a regular army. The editorial department of Lang Taosha was not a formal social organization and initially did not qualify for an office space. However, the head of the social union could not resist the persistent demands of the chief editor, Li Hong, and allocated a room to the editorial department of Lang Taosha. Although it was only one room, it was quite spacious, covering an area of over 40 square meters. Li Hong, taking inspiration from the college student journal next door, divided the room into two halves. One half served as the editorial department's office, while the other half served as a bedroom. Li Hong felt that living alone was too luxurious, and since the rooms boys occupied next door, she felt a bit scared and wanted to find a companion. Therefore, she asked Gu Zheng to move in and live with her. Compared to the old days when 8 girls were crammed into a single dormitory, it's certainly much more spacious now. There's ample space for activities in a bedroom spanning just over 20 square meters, besides 2 beds. Girls were naturally able to beautify their surroundings, and Li Hong was particularly fond of beauty. She found several photos of movie stars and world-renowned paintings to paste on the walls, and even hung a string of seashell wind chimes on the doorframe. After some arrangement, the humble room took on a cozy atmosphere. The editors of Lang Taosha were all part-time students, and they didn't have to work together in the office. Except for holding a pre-editing meeting every issue or occasionally having someone come to submit manuscripts, it was usually very quiet. Strangely, Gu Zheng had not had a nightmare since she moved in with Li Hong. When Li Hong went to class or was busy with other things, and Gu Zheng was alone in the bedroom, she would feel lonely. She would pick up a book and go to the balcony when she felt lonely. The top floor of the house was only half-roofed, with the other half being a terrace, which was as large as half a basketball court. Due to waterproofing, the ground was covered with a thick layer of asphalt. When the sun shone on it or it rained, the terrace was shiny, resembling a blue lake. A table tennis table is placed on the terrace, and boys often play there. Most of the time, the terrace was empty and deserted. Gu Zheng would sit by the edge of the terrace holding a book in her hands. When tired, she would raise her head to enjoy the scenery for a while. Sometimes, Gu Zheng would take out the Gu Zheng her mother had left behind and play a few songs, such as Grandma's Ping Hu Bei, Childhood, and Going Along the Ridge. These were all Taiwan campus songs that Gu Zheng liked in her ordinary times. They were melancholic, sentimental, and romantic, just like her personality. Perhaps it was because she had rarely played it since she started college, but her hands were a bit clumsy, and she did not play it very smoothly. Some parts were even out of tune. This made Gu Zheng feel a little frustrated. She used too much strength on her fingers, and 2 strings snapped. After that, Gu Zheng put the Gu Zheng back in its case and never took it out again. The Osmanthus Garden dormitory was built along the mountain, surrounded by tall sycamore trees. The dense branches and leaves resembled men's robust arms, some extending onto the terrace. Standing by the terrace, those thick leaves could be reached out and touched. Pinching them, they felt fluffy, like human skin, with a great texture. You could smell a fragrance mixed with sunlight and earth. If you let go of your hand, the leaves would fly down obliquely like airplanes. If it were autumn, the ground would be covered with golden fallen leaves. But now was the season of growth. There wasn't even a piece of paper on the ground, let alone leaves. It was as clean as if it had been washed with water. Gu Zheng stayed on the terrace for quite a while. When Li Hong returned and found no one in the bedroom, she went to the terrace and found her. "I thought you had gone somewhere, but you were hiding here." Li Hong snatched the book from her hand. "Are you reading or daydreaming?" It was Wolf's To the Lighthouse. When she interviewed Song Xiaofan last time, she saw this book, and after that Gu Zheng went to the library and borrowed a copy. Because she was busy with her studies, she had not finished it yet. "I really admire you, reading one novel for so long." Li Hong said it was hard to tell whether it was sarcasm or praise. "Honestly, I don't like Wolf, with all her rambling. She can write half a book about a single sesame seed. It's so tedious and bizarre." "That's how stream-of-consciousness novels are, right?" Gu Zheng said, but her tone was not very firm. When it came to professional literary topics, she was not very confident. Compared to Li Hong, who was a Chinese major, she was just an amateur. "Reading a few stream-of-consciousness novels is okay, but reading too many is unbearable. I borrowed James Joyce's Ulysses from the library when taking a foreign literature class. It's a classic stream-of-consciousness novel known as the 20th century's greatest novel. The protagonist's experiences in one day, from morning to night, were written in over 1 million words. It was all about the husband cheating, the wife having an affair, masturbation, and prostitution. From beginning to end, it was all this messy stuff. At the end of the novel, the female protagonist Molly, the wife who had been cheating, her stream of consciousness, was written for over 40 pages. After reading it, I felt dizzy and was almost driven crazy. Gu Zheng had not read Ulysses and was a bit unfamiliar with Joyce. She could not judge Li Hong's opinion. But Wolf's writing is exquisite and poetic, Gu Zheng said as if she was defending Wolf. She had taken a semester of foreign literature, but because she had not done well on her law exams, she had no choice but to drop out. So her understanding of foreign literature was only superficial. Wolf is a self-loving and even self-abusive woman. From a room of one's own to the lighthouse, she expresses the same theme: hatred for her father and love for her mother. Wolf had strong Oedipal and Electra complexes, but in her novels, she uses reverse expressions of these complexes to achieve a sense of estrangement. Li Hong's words were very professional and sounded like lecture notes she had copied from her foreign literature classes. It had unquestionable authority over Gu Zheng, who was not a Chinese major. However, she did not seem to agree with Li Hong's view of Wolf. Self-loving and self-abusive. It was not just Wolf who had this tendency. It appeared that most talented female writers had this problem. She thought, Mrs. Ramsay is beautiful, virtuous, gentle, and kind in The Lighthouse. She embodied all the virtues of women. It was said that Mrs. Ramsay was modeled after Wolf's own mother. Gu Zheng couldn't help but think of her mother. Was this the reason why she liked The Lighthouse? What a fortunate and enviable woman having a mother like this. Have you heard about what happened to Song Xiaofan and Li Xin? Li Hong suddenly asked. What happened? Gu Zheng was taken aback. Li Hong looked around and lowered her voice. Not long ago, Song Xiaofan and Li Xin were arrested by the police. Song Xiaofan and Li Xin, why did they get arrested? Gu Zheng was shocked. They were having a secret meeting at a hotel by the school entrance. When the police raided the place, they could not produce a marriage certificate, so they were treated as prostitutes and were locked up in the police station for a night. The next day, the school intervened and got them out. Gu Zheng could not believe her ears, but what Li Hong had said seemed very real and did not seem like something she had made up. It's said that Li Xin came all the way to have a secret meeting with Song Xiaofan, Li Hong continued. Illegal cohabitation, adultery. No matter which one it is, both of them are going to get into trouble. But wasn't it said that they were in love? Gu Zheng said hesitantly. Who knows? Li Hong curled her lips. Li Xin is just a playboy, and this is not the first time he has been caught secretly meeting with someone at a hotel. It's said that he was arrested a few years ago in Shijiazhuang, also with a female writer. Gu Zheng could hear a hint of gloating in Li Hong's words. She thought of the scene she had seen at the Christmas ball at the Maple Garden Graduate Student Club and could not help but feel some emotion. Recently, constant rumors were going around campus at Dongjiang University. Some students in the foreign languages department had gotten an abortion. A professor and a female student in the journalism department had engaged in a teacher-student romance, etc. All of these rumors involved private affairs between men and women. Every time Gu Zheng heard such rumors, she felt disgusted. What shocked her most was a case in the law department just last week. The department's administrative staffer, Jin, and the vice director of the department, Tang Fei, were having an affair caught by her husband in bed, and the matter became the talk of the town. Thinking of how the vice director, Tang Fei, had talked to her just last week, and of how Jin, who had just given birth to a child, had her face covered with freckles, Gu Zheng felt disgusted. The bathhouse was open on Wednesday and Saturday. Today was Wednesday. Since Gu Zheng had moved in with Li Hong, they had almost always gone to the bathhouse on Wednesdays. There were too many people in the bathhouse on Saturdays, so there were relatively fewer people bathing on Wednesdays. After going to the cafeteria for lunch and returning to the dorm, Gu Zheng and Li Hong each carried their plastic wash basins to the bathhouse before they could wash their bowls. The bathhouse was next to the cafeteria. It was a red brick building. As the weather turned warmer, more and more people went to bathe. After some time, the bathhouse would be open every day. The male bathhouse and the female bathhouse were adjacent to each other, separated by a wall. The people coming in and out were like two torrents gushing out at the entrance. The milky white steam diffused out of the entrance like a cloud that was not a cloud or a mist that was not a mist. People walked through the mist, and the fog lingered on their heads. It was a hazy and unique scene. The girls had all removed their hair ties and clips, letting their long black hair fall loosely on their shoulders, fully displaying their feminine charm. One hand carried a plastic basin full of soap, shampoo, lotion, and other products, and the other carried a plastic bag full of clothes like they were moving house. The boys, on the other hand, were much simpler. They usually only took a piece of soap and a towel to save time. They had taken off almost all of their clothes. Some of them only wore a pair of shorts and were shirtless, making the girls who came towards them dare not look directly at them. When Gu Zheng first went to the bathhouse to take a shower, she was not accustomed to such a scene. Whenever she saw those almost naked boys at the entrance of the bathhouse, she quickly lowered her head, as if she had caught a glimpse of something inappropriate. She was particularly unaccustomed to stripping naked in the bathhouse and exposing her body in front of so many people, even though they were all girls. For a long time, she didn't dare to take off all her clothes, but kept a bra and panties on. When she stood under the shower head with clothes on, the girls beside her cast astonished or mocking glances, looking at her like a monster. Once, while changing clothes in the changing room, she heard two girls whispering to each other while secretly watching her. She must have something unsightly growing on her body. Otherwise, why wouldn't she want to take off all her clothes when taking a shower? Yeah, or maybe her is too small and she's ashamed to show it? The rest of the conversation was inaudible. Gu Zheng couldn't help blushing. Perhaps spurred by these discussions, Gu Zheng removed her underwear and shorts the next time in the bathhouse. When her body was fully exposed under the watchful eyes of everyone, almost all the gazes in the bathhouse were focused on her. But this time it wasn't ridicule but amazement and envy. Because the naked body of Gu Zheng they saw was perfect in both figure and skin. Gu Zheng's body was symmetrical and graceful, conforming to the golden ratio. Her skin was as white as ice and snow, smooth as silk, flawless and beautiful. When the water sprayed onto her body from the shower head, it seemed like pearls rolling on jade. In the past, Gu Zheng rarely seriously examined and appreciated her own body. Occasionally, when she looked at it, she didn't feel beautiful but rather felt a sense of shame. But the gazes and exclamations of the girls in the bathhouse made her discover her beauty for the first time, just like what Rilke wrote in The Prayer of a Young Girl. It is as cold as the snow on Christmas Day, yet it is also a flame, a flame. Oh my God, your body is so beautiful, like a work of art. This was the exclamation uttered by Li Hong and Gu Zheng when they took their first bath in the bathhouse. At that time, they were both under the same shower head, and Li Hong stared straight at Gu Zheng's naked body, praising her while also reaching out to touch her. Your skin is so delicate, like satin. Her body shuddered as soon as her hand touched Gu Zheng, and she dodged away quickly. The steam was hot, and the water splashed everywhere, making the two of them feel as if they were enveloped in a cloud of mist. They were so close to each other that every part of their bodies could be seen clearly. In Li Hong's eyes, Gu Zheng's body resembled a masterfully crafted porcelain, with every part perfectly proportioned, as if calculated with precision mathematics. The only slight flaw was that Gu Zheng's limbs seemed a bit slender, akin to a plant that had not fully developed. Even her breasts resembled two freshly formed green apples. These were typical breasts of a virgin, eliciting a feeling of pity in Li Hong's heart. She wondered, was I this naive when I was 15? At that time, Li Hong had just entered high school and was too shy to look directly at boys when speaking to them. If it weren't for her brief first love with her art teacher later on, would she still be a virgin now? Li Hong couldn't help but lower her head and look at herself as she thought this. Compared to Gu Zheng, her body resembled a summer pomegranate, full and plump, with every part dripping with sexy juices. Those round breasts resembled 2 ripe peaches, and the bright red nipples were like 2 small strawberries, quivering slightly with the splashing water, reminding one of the nude women in Picasso's works, emanating a strong, sexy aura. Looking at your small breasts, it's obvious you haven't been in love before. As they said this, they had already returned to the dormitory. Li Hong rummaged through a pile of underwear from the box, with over a dozen bras alone in different sizes, colors, and styles, high-end and fashionable, dazzling to the eye. Whenever she returned to the dormitory after taking a shower, Li Hong would try on these bras several times. "My mum buys them for me every time I go abroad, either bras or perfume," she muttered, not sure whether it was to show off or complain. Li Hong's breasts were almost twice the size of Gu Zheng's, and she couldn't fit into many bras. "These bras are too small. This one fits you perfectly." Li Hong gave Gu Zheng the bra that she couldn't fit into anymore, sized her up, and said, "Compared to your body, your breasts are a bit small. Don't worry, they'll naturally grow bigger after you fall in love." She smiled ambiguously. Of course, Gu Zheng understood the meaning behind her smile, but deliberately pretended not to get it, while inwardly struggling with how to decline her offer of a bra. "Gu Zheng, have you really never been in love?" Li Hong has often asked this question, but she has never been satisfied with Gu Zheng's answers. "No one has pursued such a pure girl like you. Are those boys blind? By the way, Du Wei from the photography class helped you move last time and was very helpful. He seems to be interested in you. Although this person is a bit slick, he is quite popular with girls and his photography works are also good." "Li Hong, don't talk nonsense. He's a friend of my brother's." Gu Zheng's face turned red and she pouted, seemingly a little angry. Li Hong paused. At that moment, she was trying on another pair of rose-red, large-sized bras, wearing only a translucent silk panty underneath. She strutted around the room like a model, strutting with confidence and poise. As she walked, she said to Gu Zheng, "Lang Tao said my body is good. If I were a little taller, I could be a model. I know he's complimenting me. Men in love are all like this. Even someone as lofty as Lang Tao can't escape the trend. But his words are so ambiguous that it's hard to believe. I don't even know if he really loves me." At that time, Li Hong had been in love with Lang Tao for quite some time. Although their relationship was not public, she never hid it from Gu Zheng. When the two of them chatted in the dormitory, Li Hong would often digress into talking about Lang Tao, turning into a chatty little woman. Gu Zheng, who had never been in love, couldn't understand Li Hong, just as Li Hong couldn't understand Gu Zheng. Their relationship could be described as close girlfriends, but the degree of mutual inner estrangement was as if they lived in 2 completely different worlds. 2. Du Wei and Gu Zheng. After that Christmas dance party, Du Wei invited Gu Zheng to dance at the Maple Garden Graduate Club several times, but she refused each time. Gu Zheng refused Du Wei's invitations, not because she disliked or was repulsed by him, but because she had no interest in dancing. Since Gu Zheng stepped onto the college campus, she had never liked the atmosphere in the dance halls. Whenever a man she knew or did not know embraced her, she would feel very uncomfortable, and the unique smell of men would make her feel a near instinctive disgust. There were several times when she could not endure that intense disgust and would suddenly push her partner away and escape from the dance floor. From then on, unless it was a collective recreational activity organized by the literary society or her class, she rarely went to the dance halls again. Du Wei did not seem to mind Gu Zheng's rejection. He was the kind of person with particularly thick facial skin, especially when dealing with girls. He had a tenacious energy to achieve his goals. However, this energy was not a reckless force. It was a hidden scheme. In the beginning, he used this kind of energy to win over Jiang Lili, a typist at the Chuzhou City Workers' Palace of Culture. Through Jiang Lili's father's connections, he got himself a position as a professional photographer at the Workers' Palace of Culture. Jiang Lili was not only fat and short, but she also had body odor. When Du Wei invited her to see a movie for the first time, the smell almost made him run out of the theater. To decide whether he should maintain his relationship with Zhang Lili, he hesitated many times. Later, he even specifically consulted his godfather. After his godfather had an accident at his clinic in Pai Town, he hid in his house for a long time to escape punishment from the government. From a very young age, Du Wei regarded his godfather, Luo Zheng, as his life mentor. Whenever he encountered a complex problem, he first thought about asking his godfather rather than his mother. That time, Du Wei told Luo Zheng about the inner conflict.
"Answer me one question first," Luo Zheng said. "In your mind, is being a photographer more important, or is marrying a beautiful wife more important?" "Both are important," Du Wei replied without thinking. "You cannot have both the fish and the bear's paw." Luo Zheng shook his head and said, "You can only choose one." Seeing the serious look on Luo Zheng's face, Du Wei scratched his scalp and thought about it. Then he said loudly, "I want to be a photographer." "If that's the case, then you don't need to hesitate." Luo Zheng smiled slightly. "Go ahead and pursue Zhang Lili. As long as you can win her over, you can rely on her father's connections to get a position as a photography cadre at the Workers' Palace of Culture. Once you become a photography cadre, you'll be one step closer to becoming a photographer." "But I don't like Zhang Lili. I hate the fox smell," Du Wei said with a distressed look on his face. "She's too ugly." "If you want to realize your dreams, you must temporarily endure the fox smell. Otherwise, you can only be an individual worker for the rest of your life," Luo Zheng said coldly. "Think about your father, Du Fu. If he did not have that spirit of enduring humiliation, could he have become a photo studio owner from a vegetable farmer's son?" Perhaps realizing something was wrong with his words, he added, "Your father was the first to marry the wealthy daughter of the photo studio owner, and only then did he become the owner of the photo studio." This was the first time Du Wei had heard his godfather mention his father since childhood. He wanted to argue with Luo Zheng. "My mother was a great beauty when she was young. How could Zhang Lili compare to her?" he said with disdain. "Many men suffer from only looking at a woman's pretty face. That includes your godfather," Luo Zheng said with a bit of embarrassment. "Back then, if it wasn't for my infatuation with the commander's daughter, how would I have fallen into such a state?" Luo Zheng's words seemed to hide a story he could not easily discuss. Luo Zheng was not only Du Wei's mentor in life, but also his sexual mentor. The first time that Du Wei had sex with a woman was under Luo Zheng's guidance. It was in a brothel in Pai Town. Luo Zheng had personally found a girl with large breasts for him. Before that, Du Wei's knowledge of sex came from the hand-copied novel The Heart of a Niangzu that Luo Zheng had given him. But when he faced a living woman, he was still so nervous that he was at a loss, and when he was in the middle of it, he ejaculated in a mess. When Luo Zheng saw him looking crestfallen, he laughed heartily and said, "After I give you a few magic pills, you will know what it means to be a man." When Luo Zheng said this, his face was filled with a lewd expression, but Du Wei did not hate this kind of lewdness. It was similar to how he had felt when he had read the hand-copied novel The Heart of a Niangzu. It had a unique attraction for him. Luo Zheng had always occupied a special place in Du Wei's heart. In his memories, his mother always had a listless and gloomy look, with rarely a smile. She was always unkempt and messy. After eating, she would not even bother washing her bowl. The house was dirty and covered in dust. Whenever he came home from school, Du Wei would see his mother leaning against the doorframe, staring into the distance with a dazed look. At first, Du Wei thought that his mother was waiting for him, but when he would bounce up to his mother with his backpack and call out, "Mom, I'm home!" his mother would only hum softly with a blank look, her eyes still gazing at the distance, and she would not even move the body that was leaning against the doorframe. Long after, Du Wei finally understood that the person his mother was waiting for was his godfather. As long as his godfather came, his mother would be like a different person. Not only would she change into clean and beautiful clothes and make herself look radiant,
but the house would also be cleaned up to be tidy and new as if it were a holiday. In Du Wei's mind, Wu Boxiong often came and went without a trace. Sometimes he disappeared for months, and sometimes he suddenly appeared like a knight-errant descending from the sky. At that time, Du Wei had already started elementary school and no longer lived with his mother, living alone in a bedroom. That bedroom used to be his father's study, adjacent to his mother's bedroom, separated by only a wall. Every time Wu Bozhong came, he would stay with Du Wei. In addition to bringing Du Wei many delicious and fun things, Wu Bozhong also told him stories. His godfather traveled widely, being well-informed and having a belly full of strange stories. Sometimes he would talk most of the night, and Du Wei would listen with great interest and no sleepiness. One night, Du Wei woke up and found that Wu Bozhong was not around. When he went to the toilet to urinate, he saw Wu Bozhong coming out of his mother's bedroom across the way, wearing only a pair of baggy pants. Their eyes met. Du Wei saw that Wu Bozhong's face was flushed as if he had been drinking.
"What were you doing in my mum's room?" Du Wei asked warily.
"Guess." Wu Bozhong dodged his gaze and smiled mysteriously. "I can't guess," Du Wei said, twisting his neck. Wu Bozhong chuckled again and said,
"You're still young now. Of course you can't guess. You'll know when you grow up."
As Wu Bozhong spoke, an ambiguous expression appeared on his face. "If you want to conquer the world and achieve your ideals, the first thing you need to learn is how to conquer and utilize women rather than being ruined by their beautiful faces. Remember, apart from your parents, no one is untouchable in this world." His godfather, Wu Boxiong, gave Du Wei this motto after he became an adult. In addition, Wu Bozhong also gave him an adult gift, a handwritten novel titled The Heart of a Young Girl. With Wu Bozhong's motto and the coming-of-age ceremony, Du Wei successfully won the heart of Jiang Lili, the daughter of Secretary Jiang of the Workers' Cultural Palace, and became a dedicated photographer for the Workers' Cultural Palace. Then, step by step, he entered the gates of Dongjiang University and became a student in the photography class. Where was his next goal? Du Wei couldn't articulate it. Du Wei only knew that he had fallen for Gu Zheng. He didn't know when he had started liking Gu Zheng. Was it when he invited her to eat at the Good Girl restaurant with Wang Sheng, or when he first met Gu Zheng at the Juzhen Garden in Chuju City a few years ago? Du Wei couldn't say for sure. In his dictionary, the synonym for like was conquer. Therefore, he didn't hide his pursuit of Gu Zheng. Subconsciously, he regarded conquering Gu Zheng as a sign of stepping onto a new stage in his life. He remembered that his godfather, Wu Bozhong, had once said, "If a man can't even conquer the woman he likes, how can he talk about conquering the world and achieving his ideals?" His godfather's words were often contradictory. But what did it matter? Who had ever said that people were not a collection of contradictions? Du Wei genuinely liked Gu Zheng, and this feeling was vastly different from his experience when interacting with Jiang Lili. Gu Zheng's refreshing and unpretentious demeanor, coupled with her innocent and unsophisticated aura, captivated him. Gu Zheng's indifference and arrogance not only failed to quench his inner desires, but instead, they acted like fuel, igniting the suppressed desires he harbored when he was with Jiang Lili. This makes him feel utterly captivated and consumed by desire every time he sees Gu Zheng. However, Gu Zheng was unaware of Du Wei's secret thoughts. In contrast to Li Hong's overly precocious sexual awareness, Gu Zheng's body remained in a state of deep sleep, which was related to her unique upbringing. Over the years, she often returned to the purple-tiled house in Pai Town in her dreams. In front of the house was an unfathomable pond filled with lotus flowers in midsummer. Principal Gong's huge, bald head squirmed like a worm on her mother's chest, and her brother Zong Tianyi's red spear deeply pierced Principal Gong's eye socket, dripping with fresh blood and accompanied by a mournful scream. Principal Gong, who was fleeing in panic, was wearing no pants, revealing a bloated and ugly buttock. Gu Zheng woke up many times, recalling the scenes in her dreams and feeling a strong wave of nausea, unable to hold back vomiting. This nausea accompanied Gu Zheng throughout her teenage years, from middle school to university. As she entered the adult world, she became increasingly disinterested in interacting with the opposite sex. Whenever a boy attempted to get close to her, she instinctively rejected him and felt a strong aversion. She hated all men. In Gu Zheng's eyes, everything about men was so ugly. Their bodies and body odor emitted a filthy smell akin to a cesspool, making her avoid them at all costs. Women are made of water, while men are made of mud. When she read Dream of the Red Chamber, she felt that Jia Baoyu's words were said well. Because of this mentality, Gu Zheng harbored a deep aversion towards her brother Zhang Tianyi. Every time Gu Zheng met her brother, the illustrations from Jin Pingmei she had seen under his pillow and the unpleasant fishy smell in the room would emerge in her mind. That was the smell left behind by Zhang Tianyi's masturbation. When her brother suddenly appeared at her grandparents' house after disappearing for several years in Pigu Mountain, Gu Zheng felt an unfamiliar feeling that she had never experienced before, as if he was not her brother but an unrelated person. In the years that followed, this sense of strangeness never disappeared but grew stronger and stronger. She could no longer feel the brotherly bond of mutual dependence with Zhang Tianyi as she had when she was young. She felt some guilt and confusion, as if she had done something wrong to her brother. However, she couldn't change herself, just as she couldn't change her attitude towards all the opposite sex. This was especially true for Du Wei. From the beginning to now, every contact between Gu Zheng and Du Wei had been out of social etiquette. If Du Wei weren't her brother's friend, Gu Zheng wouldn't have interacted with him even once. Therefore, she firmly refused every invitation from Du Wei to dance with him. This weekend, the school's open-air cinema was showing a movie. Du Wei bought 3 movie tickets. He had planned to invite Li Hong and Gu Zheng to watch the film together, but Li Hong had gone home, leaving Gu Zheng alone in the dormitory. Du Wei was mentally prepared for another rejection. At that time, Gu Zheng had just finished dinner and was about to head to the library to review when she saw Du Wei come in. She thought he would invite her to dance again, so she couldn't help but frown. She heard that there was a movie screening at the open-air cinema, so she hesitated for a moment and asked, "What movie is it?" "The Call of the Distant Mountain, a Japanese film," Du Wei said while observing Gu Zheng's reaction. Although Gu Zheng was reluctant to interact with men in real life, she harbored a strong interest in men depicted in artistic works. For some time, she was almost obsessed with Japanese film star Ken Takakura. Whenever a film starring Ken Takakura was shown, no matter how busy she was with her studies, she would make time to watch it. Ken Takakura's face, full of vicissitudes and seemed carved out, had a peculiar attraction for Gu Zheng. She felt that she had seen it somewhere before. No, she had dreamed of it. The man who often appeared in her dreams wearing a cloak had such a face. "I am your father," the man said to her. Gu Zheng felt that the man resembled Ken Takakura. The Call of the Distant Mountain is a new film starring Ken Takakura, which Gu Zheng hasn't seen yet. She agreed. It was already dark when Gu Zheng put down her bag and followed Du Wei out of the girls' dormitory, heading towards the open-air cinema. The path from Osmanthus Garden Dormitory to the open-air cinema was crowded with people, mostly couples. The route was lined with osmanthus trees in spring blossoms, their buds emitting a delicate fragrance. Du Wei sniffed the scent in the air, feeling his heart flutter. For a moment, he couldn't distinguish whether the fragrance filling his nose came from the osmanthus trees by the roadside or from Gu Zheng beside him. A sudden surge of ecstatic joy made him a little confused. After the movie ended, Du Wei offered to escort Gu Zheng back to her dormitory. Gu Zheng was still immersed in the plot of The Call of the Distant Mountain, and her expression was somewhat dazed, so she didn't refuse Du Wei. This surprised and delighted Du Wei again. He was sinking deeper and deeper into his hallucinations. The open-air cinema is between the school's administrative building and Maple Garden. There are 2 paths leading back to the Osmanthus Garden Dormitory, the main road and a narrow path. Taking the narrow path involves traversing a secluded mountain forest known as the famous Lover's Forest. Most people opt for the main road after exiting the open-air cinema, while some couples choose the narrow path and venture into the lover's forest. Du Wei led Gu Zheng, immersed in the movie plot, like a skilled guide, into the lover's forest. Amidst towering trees and dense forests, the night exuded a seductive charm. The moonlight filters through the leaves, casting specks of silver light into the lover's forest, giving each person who entered a dreamlike sensation. The warm spring breeze carried the whispers of lovers, occasionally punctuated by a gentle moan emanating from beneath a certain tall tree, stirring the heart and mind, leading to wild imaginings. Du Wei couldn't help but grab Gu Zheng's hand. His sudden action jolted Gu Zheng out of the movie plot. She looked around, momentarily unsure of where she was. "Where is this?" she asked in surprise and fear. "This is the lover's forest," Du Wei said, attempting to pull Gu Zheng into his embrace. He was about to be melted by a burning flame, murmuring, "Gu Zheng." Gu Zheng suddenly woke up as if from a dream, realizing her current situation. "Du Wei, what are you doing?" she shouted, trying to break free from Du Wei's grip. Despite her exerted efforts, Du Wei's hand, like a pair of pincers, only tightened its grip on her. "Gu Zheng," Du Wei continued to mumble, "I like you. Ever since I first met you, I've fallen for you. Your brother asked me to take good care of you, and I can't let him down. For you, I'm willing to do anything, even kill." Gu Zheng. I'm a person who dares to think and dare to do. As long as I can think of it, I must get it. I don't want to give up on women or careers, including you. My godfather said that I would definitely make a great career in my life. People like me, only you are worthy, humph. Jiang Lily is not even fit to carry your shoes. Du Wei muttered, while bringing his mouth closer to Gu Zheng. Gu Zheng smelled the bad breath coming from Du Wei's mouth, which resembled the stench of a cesspool. That was the most disgusting smell to Gu Zheng. Instinctively, she exerted all her strength to break free from Du Wei's grasp and raised her hand, slapping him hard. The slap was so loud that it sounded like firecrackers in the quiet forest, startling the two kissing lovers. Du Wei was stunned by the slap. Before he could recover, Gu Zheng had already stumbled out of the woods. He was stunned for a moment before instinctively withdrawing his hand and stroking his cheek, which felt burning hot. 3. Between sisters-in-laws, 1. The next morning, Li Hong returned to school. As soon as she entered the dormitory, she saw Gu Zheng sitting on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the gloomy sky outside. A copy of Virginia Woolf's The Lighthouse was placed on her lap. Her gaze was dreamy, as if she were lost in thought, and she didn't notice Li Hong entering. Li Hong felt strange and leaned in to take a closer look. Seeing a trail of tears on Gu Zheng's face, she couldn't help but be startled and asked, "Gu Zheng, you're crying. What happened?" Gu Zheng hurriedly wiped the corner of her eye and said in a cover-up manner, "Nothing." Li Hong noticed that Gu Zheng's eyes were red and swollen, clearly indicating that she had been crying, especially the frightened look in her eyes, as if she had been startled by something, and it was inevitable that something had happened. Li Hong couldn't help but feel a bit suspicious. However, she knew that Gu Zheng was introverted, like Lin Daiyu, who was prone to melancholy and sentimentality. She always kept her worries to herself and rarely confided in others. Therefore, Li Hong didn't pursue the matter further. A few days later, Gu Zheng's mood gradually returned to normal. That afternoon, after returning from her international law class, she was stopped head-on by a woman just as she was walking downstairs to her dormitory. "Sister, I finally found you." The woman was around 30, with thick eyebrows and big eyes. Her face was flushed, resembling a ripe apple. She spoke in a dialect from another region. On campus, many boys were wearing t-shirts and girls were wearing skirts, but she was still wearing a thick jacket and a green scarf tied around her neck, which was out of place in the current environment, as if she had emerged from another world. "Sister, we've been waiting for you here since noon, and it's finally not been in vain," the woman said as she tightly held Gu Zheng's hand, tears welling up in her eyes as if she had found a savior. Gu Zheng felt the woman looked familiar but couldn't recall where they met. "Are you—" She hesitantly sized up the woman in front of her, trying to pull her hand out of her grasp, but she held on tightly. She tried twice but failed to pull her hand out. "What? You don't recognize me, sister?" the woman exclaimed, her eyes widening in surprise. "I'm your sister-in-law!" With that, she released her grip and fumbled in her pocket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. Gu Zheng glanced at it and realized it was the envelope she had written to her brother, Zhang Tianyi. "Look, I found you based on the address on the envelope." Gu Zheng finally recognized his sister-in-law, Kestrel. Gu Zheng had only met Kestrel once while studying at Chuju Middle School. "Child, come and call Auntie." Kestrel pulled a boy about 3 or 4 years old from behind her like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat and pushed him in front of Gu Zheng. The little boy lowered his head and remained silent, clutching Kestrel's lapel tightly with his tiny hands. His dark eyes darted around Gu Zheng, seemingly somewhat shy. Gu Zheng felt that the boy's facial features resembled those of her brother Zhang Tianyi. "Sister-in-law, what are you doing here?" she asked, looking at the mother and son in confusion. "Where's my brother? Isn't he with you?" "Don't mention that deadbeat. He was out there all year, running all over the world, a few months rare to return home. Where to find him?" Kestrel's words were clearly tinged with anger. She gently stroked her son's head and said with a worried expression, "You see, the baby is sick with nephritis. The hospitals in the town and county can't cure it, so we have to come to the big hospital in Dajiang to cure it." Gu Zheng then noticed that the little boy's face was slightly swollen and his skin was yellowish. Due to the oversized hat, or perhaps to prevent catching a cold, the brim was buckled down low on his forehead, giving him a sickly appearance. "So that's how it is." Gu Zheng's heart immediately surged with compassion. She reached out and touched the boy's forehead. "What's his name?" "His name is Xiao Xiao, Zhang Xiao Xiao." Kestrel said, "When the baby was born, his father was outside in the coal business. I took this name. It is very rustic, right?" She seemed a little embarrassed. A shadow crossed Gu Zheng's mind when she recalled the scene of her brother Zhang Tianyi dining with that female singer named Meng Fei on Jiangshan Island. But she didn't dwell on it further. It was already lunchtime, and students who had finished their meals poured out of the dormitory buildings like streams released from a dam, merging into a river of people on the main road leading to the cafeteria. The air was filled with the fragrance of food. "Come, I'll take you to the cafeteria. Let's eat first," she said. Gu Zheng brought her sister-in-law Kestrel and nephew Xiao Xiao to finish their meal in the cafeteria. When they returned to their dormitory, Li Hong had also returned. She had never heard Gu Zheng mention his family, as if she had no family. Now, suddenly having a sister-in-law and nephew, she couldn't help but feel a bit surprised. Li Hong had always been warm towards others, which was why she had good relationships with everyone. This moment was also like this. Not only did she greet Kestrel warmly, but she also followed Gu Zheng's sister-in-law and called her more affectionately than Gu Zheng did. She also took out her own snacks for Xiao Xiao. Li Hong had the habit of eating snacks. An exquisite snack box was next to the bed, which was filled with chocolates and other snacks. Many of them were bought by her parents when they went abroad. Xiao Xiao opened his eyes wide and looked at the chocolate that Li Hong stuffed into his mouth. He didn't know what it was and was curious, but he didn't dare to put it in his mouth. "Eat it, Xiao Xiao. It's chocolate. It's sweet," Gu Zheng coaxed. She had never spent time with children before and wasn't skilled at coaxing. Xiao Xiao, being the first time he met her, was naturally shy and buried himself in her mother's arms. This child has always been shy and doesn't like to talk. He's almost 4 years old and still can't speak in complete sentences. Kestrel hugged Xiao Xiao and said apologetically. At this time, it had already gotten dark. Li Hong pulled Gu Zheng aside and whispered, "Do your sister-in-law and nephew have a place to stay?" This question reminded Gu Zheng, who glanced at the bulging canvas satchel that Kestrel had brought and said, "They haven't checked in yet, have they? Why don't I take them to a hotel?" Staying at a hotel costed money, and Gu Zheng was usually frugal in her daily life. Her sister-in-law didn't seem like a wealthy person either. Li Hong said, "How about this? I'll go home and stay there, and your sister-in-law and nephew can sleep on my bed." Gu Zheng felt bad and quickly said, "Sleeping in your bed? How can I do that?" Li Hong said, "What's the point of being polite between us? Anyway, my home isn't far from the school." Seeing Li Hong's sincere expression, Gu Zheng felt deeply grateful and didn't say anything further. Li Hong packed a few clothes to be washed into a black backpack. Then she said bye to Kestrel and left. After Li Hong left, Gu Zheng helped his sister-in-law Kestrel and nephew Xiao wash up. Gu Zheng asked his sister-in-law and Xiao to sleep in her bed while she slept in Li Hong's bed. After a day of running around and being sick, Xiao was so sleepy that he couldn't open his eyes. After washing up, he fell asleep, still holding the chocolate that Li Hong had given him. The two sisters-in-law sat facing each other on the edge of the bed. After being busy for a while, Gu Zheng finally had time to talk with her sister-in-law. "Sister-in-law, don't be too anxious. The doctors in the provincial city are highly skilled, and your minor illness will be cured," Gu Zheng comforted her sister-in-law. "I think so too. Otherwise, I wouldn't have traveled such a long distance to bring the baby here," said Kestrel, a forced smile creeping across her lips. Gu Zheng recalled her complaining tone when mentioning her brother when they first met and asked, "Has my brother not been home recently?" When asked this question unexpectedly, Kestrel's eyes suddenly turned red and tears fell. She turned her face away, lay on the quilt and cried, her shoulders heaving, sobbing, and crying very sadly. Gu Zheng didn't know what to do. When Kestrel calmed down, she took a handkerchief and handed it over, carefully asking, "Sister-in-law, what exactly happened?" "Sister, I really don't know where to start." Kestrel took the handkerchief, wiped her tears, and said, "I am 5 years older than your brother. I have always regarded your brother as a great gift from God. Otherwise, why did I meet him under the big locust tree at the village entrance that day? My father said it was a coincidence, but there is no such coincidence in the world. Such a handsome young man suddenly appeared before me as if he had fallen from the sky. Who would believe that this is not God's arrangement? From the moment I saw your brother, I made up my mind to marry him in this life. Before that, there were so many young men in the village, and none was as handsome as him. I admire him. Since your brother and I married, we have had a good life." My father handed over the 2 small coal mines in our family to him to manage. I stayed at home to do the laundry, cook, and tend to the vegetable garden for him and my father, and occasionally went to the mines to take a look. I have to say that your brother is really a smart man. It didn't take long for him to manage the small coal mines in an orderly manner. It produced more coal than before, and the number of accidents also decreased. Those coal miners who didn't initially take him seriously also accepted him. Many people in the village who gossiped about our marriage also changed their tone and began to praise and envy us. For me, it was a happy time. The Kestrel sighed, glanced at the sleeping Xiao, and then at Gu Zheng, continuing. "Unfortunately, the good times didn't last long. A few years later, shortly after giving birth to Xiao, my relationship with your brother changed. At that time, our family's small coal mines had increased by several, and your brother merged several other small coal mines in the village to establish the Red Rock Valley Agricultural, Industrial, and Commercial Trading Company. The legal representative and general manager were both him. As we made more and more money, your brother's reputation grew. Red Rock Valley gradually couldn't accommodate him anymore. The company set up branches in Beizhou and Chuzhou, and Red Rock Valley's coal was sold to many cities in Beizhou, Chuzhou, and across the country. Your brother was always away on business, rarely returning for a year or so. Even when he occasionally came back, he didn't stay at home but stayed in hotels in the town like a guest. When Xiao was 2 years old, he was afraid to call him Dad when he saw him. At that time, he hired people to manage the coal mines so he didn't have to manage them personally. In the eyes of many villagers in Red Rock Valley, he was already a big shot. His heirs grew bigger day by day. Sometimes when he came in, he would adopt an entrepreneurial demeanor in front of my dad. My dad was already sick, and he was so angry that he almost suffocated. My dad used to be the village leader. If it weren't for him, would those 2 small coal mines have existed? Without those 2 small coal mines, how could the business have grown bigger and bigger? But your brother didn't think like that. It seemed like everything fell from the sky. Think about it. Wasn't he himself falling from the sky? Until today, I know nothing about his past, including his family and parents. You, as his sister, only found out later. Alas, I'm digressing. Let's talk about the things in front of us. The kestrel smiled bitterly, as if telling a story that was too embarrassing to mention. Come to think of it, it should have been around the Dragon Boat Festival last year. Your brother suddenly went back to Red Rock Valley. He hadn't been home for more than half a year, and his appearance was much more grand than last time. Not only did he change the car he was riding into a new one, but there was also a gorgeous girl by his side. The girl was only about 17 or 18 years old and looked like a star on TV. She was inseparable from your brother and followed him home. My dad asked who she was, and your brother said she was his assistant. I didn't know what an assistant was, but I knew they had a special relationship from their intimacy. Later, I asked Gu Zheng about it, and it turned out to be true. That little girl is your brother's little lover. Your brother paid for her to go to art school and was going to train her to be a star. Gu Zheng is the youngest son of our neighbor, Uncle He. He has been working as a driver for your brother. I recommended him to your brother. From that day on, my heart was cold. Thinking back to when I ran into your brother under the locust tree at the village entrance, my heart felt like a pot of mixed feelings. I wanted to cry alone, but I couldn't cry in front of my father. He has been paralyzed for so many years, and his health is getting worse every year. If he knew about this, he would be even more unbearable. The eyes of the kestrel were wet, but she quickly wiped away the tears rolling out of her eyes with a handkerchief. This spring, Xiao Xiao was diagnosed with nephritis. At first, I asked the village doctor to treat him with traditional remedies, but it didn't work. Later, we went to the town and county hospitals for treatment for a while, but Xiao Xiao's condition didn't improve. I called your brother and asked him to come home and find a solution for the child. But every time he answered the phone, he was either in Xinjiang or the Northeast, sometimes even abroad somewhere. He didn't care about anything except asking me to borrow some money from the company as if Xiao Xiao wasn't his son. According to Gu Zheng, your brother always takes that little girl with him wherever he goes. I know he doesn't want to live with me anymore and wants to divorce me. I have no choice but to bring the child to the provincial capital for treatment by myself. The kestrel's voice grew increasingly low, and eventually, with a tilt of her head, she fell asleep beside Xiao Xiao, emitting snoring sounds. She was indeed tired. Listening to the snoring of her sister-in-law and nephew, which were sometimes long and sometimes short, sometimes light and occasionally heavy, Gu Zheng could not feel any sleepiness. The pillow and sheets of Li Hong were emitting a strong scent of perfume, which made her feel very uncomfortable. It was already past lights out, and the noisy campus that was busy all day had finally quieted down. Gu Zheng lay down with her eyes open for a long time, her mind still replaying her sister-in-law's words, and her heart was filled with mixed feelings. This was not the first time Gu Zheng had heard about the legendary experiences of her brother and sister-in-law, Kestrel, but she was still shocked. But what could she say? Over the years, her brother had only come back to see her once in a while, and it seemed that she didn't know much more about her brother than her sister-in-law did. In her heart, the brother who had thrown his red tassel spear at Principal Gong and the entrepreneur who had descended from the sky a few years later seemed to be two completely unrelated people. Were they really the same person? This thought had lingered in Gu Zheng's mind. She was uneasy about this for a while, feeling that she had let her brother down. But now, faced with her teary-eyed sister-in-law, she thought of Meng Fei, that woman who had been next to her brother the last time she had eaten on Jiangshan Island. Gu Zheng finally fell asleep. She dreamed that she was cleaning her brother's tiny bedroom, full of dirty clothes, dirty socks, and old newspapers. The room emitted a foul smell. Underneath her brother's pillow was a thick book, and the cover was wrapped with brown paper. The title was written with a brush and 3 characters, Jin Ping Mei. The text was in traditional characters, and she did not recognize many of the characters. There were many illustrations inside, and they were all naked men and women embracing each other in strange poses. She felt a wave of nausea. Before she could finish cleaning, she threw down the book and ran out of the room. Gu Zheng woke up at this time, the scenes from her dreams still vivid. She was a little dazed, unable to tell whether she was dreaming or if it had really happened. 4. Between sisters-in-laws. 2. The sky was beginning to turn light. Her sister-in-law, Kestrel, had gotten up some time ago without her noticing and was packing her things. Thinking they were going to the hospital today, Gu Zheng quickly got up. After washing up, her sister-in-law had already woken Xiao Xiao and dressed him. When the 3 of them came out of the dormitory, the only people on the campus were the people jogging. The campus looked empty. The morning breeze was refreshing, and their bodies felt a little cool. Kestrel was worried that Xiao Xiao might catch a cold, so she took out a scarf from her bag and wrapped it around him, only revealing a pair of round and dark eyes that looked particularly bright in the faint morning light. Gu Zheng bought a few steamed buns and mantou at the cafeteria to save time and took them with her. Then, she led Kestrel and Xiao Xiao to the school entrance. A bus went directly to the People's Hospital at the school entrance. The 3 of them waited for the bus, eating their breakfast as they waited. As soon as they finished eating, the bus arrived. Few people were on the bus, and there were plenty of empty seats. Kestrel was worried that Xiao Xiao would be unable to sit steadily, so she carried him on her lap. Gu Zheng, who had already bought the bus tickets, returned to her sister-in-law and Xiao Xiao, and she saw that she was carrying her son with one arm and holding the bulging bag with the other as if she was worried that it would be stolen. So, she took the bag and carried it on her shoulder. The bus drove, stopping again and again. They stopped at so many stops that she could not keep count, and finally, they heard the ticket seller shout in a listless voice, "People's Hospital is here! Get off at the People's Hospital!" The 3 of them got off the bus together. Kestrel held Xiao Xiao's hand with one hand and held Gu Zheng's hand tightly with the other, as if she was afraid of getting lost. She did not let go until they entered the hospital gate. Gu Zheng felt that her hand had been pinched until it was aching. Although Gu Zheng had been studying in this city for 2 years, it was her first time visiting the People's Hospital. Faced with the large crowds of people rushing in and out of the hospital entrance, she did not know where to go. After a lot of effort, she finally found the outpatient building. She asked Kestrel to wait with Xiao Xiao at the entrance while she went to register. There were even more people at the registration window, and they were lined up in several long queues. While Gu Zheng was waiting in line, she smelled a strong disinfectant smell. All hospitals had this kind of smell. Gu Zheng had never liked it since she was a child, and every time she smelled it, she felt nauseated and wanted to throw up. Today was Saturday. No wonder there were so many people. The waiting room was just as crowded as the registration window, and the people waiting for their turn blocked the entire hallway. Gu Zheng handed the registration form to a female nurse at the entrance of the doctor's office. The nurse was wearing a mask, only revealing her eyes. She looked at the registration form and said, "There are too many people today. I'm afraid you won't be able to be seen in the morning." Gu Zheng looked at the densely packed people around her and pointed at Kestrel and her son. "The patient is from out of town. It's not easy for them to come here. So..." Perhaps it was Gu Zheng's sincere tone, or maybe she was moved by the fact that Kestrel and her son were from out of town. The nurse hesitated for a moment and said, "You can wait over there, and I'll call you if I have the chance." Her voice was very soft, as if she feared being overheard. Gu Zheng thought that the nurse's eyes were lovely. She must be very beautiful, Gu Zheng thought. Gu Zheng and Kestrel waited at the doctor's office door until almost noon when they finally heard the nurse call out, "Zhong Xiao Xiao, are you here?" Gu Zheng and Kestrel replied almost simultaneously, "Here." After waiting for the whole morning, Xiao Xiao, nestled in his mother's arms, woke up from his sleep. Looking at the crowd around him, he mumbled, "Mommy, where are we?" "Baby, we're in the hospital. We're going to see the doctor. After seeing the doctor, we'll return home with Auntie," Kestrel said while holding Xiao Xiao's hand. Xiao Xiao turned his gaze towards Gu Zheng as if he was realizing where he was. When she saw Xiao Xiao's chubby forehead and adorable sleepy appearance, Gu Zheng felt a wave of affection surging in her heart once again. The doctor was a man, around his 50s, with a bald head and a shiny forehead resembling a glazed gourd. He glanced at the medical records that Gu Zheng handed over, and without even lifting his head, he asked,
"What's the situation? Does he have a fever?"
As he said this, he picked up a thermometer from a small aluminum box on the table and was about to take Gu Zheng's temperature. Gu Zheng hurriedly said, "It's not me who's sick, it's the baby." As she spoke, she pulled Xiao Xiao from Kestrel's arms and pushed him towards the doctor. The doctor rolled his eyes at Gu Zheng, conveying a hint of reproach, but still handed her the thermometer. Gu Zheng hesitated momentarily before inserting the thermometer into Xiao Xiao's armpit. While taking Xiao Xiao's temperature, the doctor examined his medical records and inquired about his condition from Kestrel. It was Kestrel's first time visiting a major hospital, and she was a bit nervous, stammering. Coupled with her non-local accent, the doctor had difficulty understanding her. Turning around, he impatiently told Gu Zheng, "I can't understand what she's saying. Please help her translate." Gu Zheng could only partially understand what Kestrel was saying. She guessed and repeated Kestrel's words in Mandarin, then glanced at Kestrel and asked in a low voice, "Sister-in-law, is that what you mean?" Yes, sister," the Kestrel nodded repeatedly in fear and trepidation. At this moment, the doctor asked Gu Zheng to take out the thermometer from Xiao Xiao's armpit, looked at it and muttered, a low-grade fever." Then he listened to his tiny chest and back with a stethoscope and picked up a pen to write a prescription. This child originally only had acute nephritis, but it has turned into chronic nephritis, which is somewhat troublesome to treat. However, our hospital recently imported a special medicine for treating kidney diseases. Taking it for a year or so should do the trick. You're lucky. Other hospitals may not have this medicine. The doctor paused and asked, "It's just a bit expensive. Can you afford it?" The two women exchanged glances, and only then did Kestrel hesitantly reply, "We can afford it. We can afford it. His father has money." The frightened expression on Kestrel's face stirred a trace of compassion in the doctor, who softened his demeanor.
"If the money is insufficient, I can prescribe 2 courses of medication for you first, and then prescribe more after you finish them."
Realizing something, he added,
"Oh, you're from out of town, and it's not easy for you to come here."
Gu Zheng said, "It's okay, doctor. I'll prescribe the medication and send it back to them." The doctor glanced at Gu Zheng and nodded.
That's good.
With that said, he quickly wrote out a prescription and handed it to Gu Zheng. At the same time, he glanced at the watch on his wrist and stood up. It was already past the end of his workday, and the doctor was clearly in a hurry. After picking up the prescription and getting the medicine from the pharmacy, it was already 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the 3 of them walked out of the hospital. They had only eaten a few steamed buns and mantou in the morning. By now, they were all hungry. Gu Zheng saw a small restaurant next to the hospital and said to Kestrel, "Sister-in-law, let's have lunch before going back to school, okay?" After lunch, they returned to Dongjiang University. All 3 were tired. Gu Zheng woke up after a nap and it was almost dark. Seeing that Xiao Xiao was still sleeping and her sister-in-law Kestrel was stuffing the clothes that hadn't been washed in the past 2 days into her bag, she said, "Sister-in-law, let me take the dirty clothes to wash. They'll be dry by tomorrow." "Shall we go home tomorrow? Let's bring our clothes back to wash," said the Kestrel. "Are you going back tomorrow?" Gu Zheng was taken aback. "Tomorrow is Sunday, and I'm planning to accompany you and Xiao Xiao to South Lake Park. You came all the way here, so you should at least take a stroll." "No, my dad is alone at home, and no one cares for him." Kestrel quickly packed her bag and said without looking up, Gu Zheng was momentarily speechless. After packing her bag, Kestrel turned around and saw Gu Zheng staring blankly. She sat beside her, held her hand, and said sincerely, "Sister, if it weren't for you in the past few days, my son and I would have been completely lost. We might not have even found the hospital. I don't know how to thank you." Hearing her say this, Gu Zheng felt a bit guilty. "Sister-in-law, don't say that. My brother isn't here. You came all this way with Xiao Xiao to see a doctor. It must have been hard for you." When Gu Zheng mentioned her brother, Kestrel's face became gloomy again.
"Sister, I'm not afraid of you making fun of me. Although I've been married to your brother for so many years, he has never told me anything about your family, so I don't even know what my in-laws look like. I feel like I've been living with a shadow." As she said this, her eyes started to get red. Gu Zheng didn't know how to comfort her. She heard her say again, "Your brother told me that his grandparents lived at the Dongjiang Iron and Steel Factory. He wanted to take Xiao Xiao to see them, but I was worried that it would take too long and my father would have an accident. I'll wait until Xiao Xiao is older and we'll go then." When Gu Zheng saw the way Kestrel hesitated and thought that her brother was telling her sister-in-law that they were going to divorce, she suddenly felt a bit sentimental. Although she had spent less than 2 days with Kestrel, she felt a sense of reluctance to part with her, and she even felt a sense of guilt, as if it was not her brother but she who had deceived and betrayed Kestrel. 5. Every unhappy family has its unique misfortune. It was already noon when Gu Zheng returned to school from the train station after seeing her sister-in-law, Kestrel, and her nephew, Xiao Xiao, off. She went to the cafeteria to have lunch before returning to her dorm. The room was tranquil. Everything was back to how it was 2 days ago, as if her sister-in-law and nephew had never been there. However, their every smile, every movement, and every gesture reappeared in her mind like a movie, so clear and vivid. Although she had not slept well last night and had gotten up early this morning to see her sister-in-law and nephew off to the train station, Gu Zheng did not feel sleepy. She read a few pages of To the Lighthouse in the Dorm, but she could not concentrate, so she put down the book and went to the office outside. A pile of Lang Taosha was on the desk, the latest issue she and Li Hong had picked up from the printing factory the day before yesterday. She had been accompanying her sister-in-law and nephew to the hospital for the past 2 days and had not had the time to look at it. Gu Zheng picked up a magazine that still smelled of ink. She opened the cover, and her eyes were drawn to a line of bold characters in the famous quotations section on the first page. "Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family has its unique misfortune." Leo Tolstoy. This was a quote from Tolstoy's masterpiece, Anna Karenina. Gu Zheng had read this novel in her freshman year, so she was naturally very familiar with it. Then in the poetry section, she saw Li Hong's poem, My Son, for L.T. Gu Zheng was the editor of this poem. When it was published in Lang Taosha magazine this time, Li Hong had specifically added the subtitle, To L.T. L.T. was Lang Tao. This poem was written by Li Hong not long after she had met Lang Tao. Gu Zheng did not understand why she had taken it out to publish now and had also added the subtitle To L.T. Was she trying to declare her love for Lang Tao through this poem? Gu Zheng wondered while browsing through the magazine. She thought she would ask Li Hong what she was thinking when she returned. The third and fourth covers were all photography works, and the author was the same person, Lao Wei. In recent issues, the third and fourth covers had been publishing Du Wei's works, as if he had taken over all the space. Du Zheng's mind conjured up Du Wei's face, which was full of self-satisfaction, and also the face of Wang Sheng, who had one eye with a double eyelid and one eye with a single eyelid. They were both her brother's friends, yet they were so different from each other in terms of their experiences and personalities. But they had become friends. Gu Zheng thought of what happened at Lover's Forest. She once again felt nauseous. Gu Zheng took the magazine back to the dorm, and while lying in bed and browsing through it, she also thought, I wonder if my sister-in-law and nephew are home yet. Thinking this, she unknowingly fell asleep. When Gu Zheng woke up from her nap and opened her eyes, she saw that Li Hong had already returned and was sitting quietly on her bed,
holding a copy of the biography of Xiao Hong in her hands. Her bed was facing hers. The large black and white portrait of Xiao Hong on the cover was facing Gu Zheng directly. Li Hong was going to graduate next year, and she was preparing to write her graduation thesis on Xiao Hong. She had been reading books about Xiao Hong recently. "How long have you been back? Did you bring back any good food?" Gu Zheng asked, half-jokingly. Every time Li Hong went home, she would bring back some delicious food from home. As her roommate, she would get her share. But Li Hong said nothing, as if she had not heard her. Gu Zheng felt that it was strange. This was not how Li Hong usually behaved. The sky was already turning dusk, and the light in the room was already dim. She walked over to the door and turned on the light. Then she walked up close to Li Hong to take a closer look. Only then did she realize that her expression was not normal. Her face was gloomy, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying. Gu Zheng's heart skipped a beat. She quickly asked, "Li Hong, what happened?" But Li Hong still did not speak, turning her face towards the window and biting her lower lip as if she was trying hard to suppress her emotions. Gu Zheng felt even more certain that something must have happened. Li Hong had always been strong-willed and rarely showed her vulnerability to others. Gu Zheng did not dare to continue to press her, so she sat down next to her and silently reached out to hold her hand, the hand that was holding the book. She felt that Li Hong's hand was icy cold. She thought something must have happened. Otherwise, how could Li Hong be like this? Li Hong had indeed encountered something, but it had happened to her parents, not to her personally. Li Hong's father had been arrested. When Li Hong heard this news when she went home yesterday, it was like a thunderbolt, and she could not believe it was real. But her mother had told her herself, and she could not but believe it. 2 years ago, her father was recognized by the Provincial Party Committee and the provincial government as one of the top 10 entrepreneurs of Dongjiang Province. How could this happen in the blink of an eye? It's true. The procuratorate has already issued a formal arrest warrant. Her mother's voice was hoarse, and her eyes were somewhat vacant, looking as if she had lost her soul. This made Li Hong realize that everything was real. She grabbed her mother's hand and shook it like a child. "But why?" But before Li Hong could finish speaking, her mother interrupted her. "Li Hong, don't ask. Your father made a mistake. No, he committed a crime. It was embezzlement." Her mother did not finish speaking before she lowered her head. "I was also implicated." Li Hong felt like she had suddenly been pushed into an invisible abyss, and all she could see was darkness. For an entire night, she locked herself in the bedroom and cried. At midnight, her mother pushed the door open, sat down at the bedside, and gently caressed her disheveled hair. "Li Hong, your mother knows that this event is not only a huge blow to me and your father, but also to you. It will definitely affect your future, but you must hold on. You must hold on no matter what, child. Otherwise, your father and I will be even more hopeless. This is what your father asked me to tell you." When Li Hong saw that her mother was speaking unusually calmly, she knew the seriousness of the matter. She buried her head in her mother's arms and cried bitterly. While she was crying, she said, "Mom, where is my father being held? I want to see him." Her mother shook her head and said, "During the trial, no one is allowed to visit. Li Hong, you are about to graduate. Don't think about anything else. Just focus on preparing for your exams and thesis, graduate, and get your job assignment. That is the only wish that your father and I have." Li Hong felt that her mother's words sounded like a farewell. She once again buried her head in her mother's arms and cried loudly. After hearing Li Hong's disjointed story, Gu Zheng could not say a single word. It was too sudden. It was simply unbelievable. In most people's eyes, Li Hong was not only talented and beautiful, but she also came from a cadre family, and she had always been envied by others. Who would have expected that her father, who was a high-ranking cadre, would become an embezzler overnight? It was as if she had fallen from the clouds to the ground. How could Li Hong, who was usually so aloof, arrogant, and self-confident, possibly bear this? As Gu Zheng thought this, a deep sense of sympathy captured her heart. Gu Zheng had also suffered similar pain, but at that time she was younger than Li Hong was now. Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family has its unique misfortune. The quote flashed in Gu Zheng's mind, and she couldn't help but think of her sister-in-law, Kestrel, who had just left. Yes, everyone's misfortune was different. She gazed blankly at the sad eyes on the cover of the biography of Xiao Hong, as if she was trying to find an answer from them,